Good morning. First of all, I'd like to apologize. We were having some technical difficulties this morning, so that's the reason for the late start. During the declared emergency, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and in-person attendance limitations. This will be a virtual public hearing, and participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to committee using WebEx, an online event that is being moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting either by their computer, a phone or tablet app, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry, and when your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Only the committee members will be participating by video. Any registered participants will be participating by audio only. We also ask that you mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with Sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended, now call this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw that apply to the property, permissions to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consents to sever properties to create new lots. Anyone in attendance today who wishes to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, and email address, because Committee of Adjustment and the TLAB, in the event of an appeal, will be sending appeal updates and notifications by email. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee rendered here today, decisions may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, TLAB, or in some limited circumstances to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, LPAT. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of every decision of the committee. The hearing procedure will be as follows. I will call each order in the item listed in the agenda. In making your submissions, where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with a presentation if desired. Where the committee does not require presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to speak to the committee. The committee may ask questions and then take the matter into the committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant or agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee, and I will comment when you're reaching the 5-minute mark. When addressing the committee, please state clearly your name and address, and please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent will proceed first and make their presentation to the committee. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if being substantially revised in order to ensure that the application is both accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application have been informed of the changes. Then individuals either in support or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members again may ask questions of each speaker at the end of their presentation. And when all speakers are finished, the applicant or agent has an opportunity to rebut only those matters that were raised by the speaker, to hone in on answering any questions that the speakers had, but not to raise new information at that time. That will then mark the end of the discussion on an application. The application is then taken into committee for a decision. Some housekeeping matters to take care of. Any minutes to approve, Mr. Deputy Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Carvalino? Do we have any minutes to approve?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, I believe we have the July 13th minutes.
Okay. Committee members, is someone prepared to make a motion approving those minutes? Mr. Komorik, thank you. Seconder for that? Ms. Reddick, thank you. All in favor? Okay, the minutes are approved. Does anyone have any staff or panel have any declarations of interest to declare on the matters before us in this morning's agenda? None to declare. Okay, then we can move on. I guess we'll deal with deferral requests. And are there any files to be closed? Okay, so we'll deal with deferral requests as we work through the applications. So the first item is number one. 92 North Drive. It's an application to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage and a rear shed with home occupation use. There are 16 variances, and I believe we have other materials, geotechnical reports, supporting materials, site-specific bylaw, forestry, ravines, transportation, and TRCA, but we also have a deferral request, which we'll deal with first. It looks like, and I think the speaker for this application is Christopher McCormick, the agent, as well as we have a neighbor from 93 Valecrest Drive on the line. Is Mr. McCormick there?
Christopher McCormack. I am the architect for this project and the applicant.
Okay. So
there is a
go ahead.
There's a request for a deferral because there are several authorities still making a review. The zoning is undertaking a second review of the work that they did in February, and they're not complete yet. And some of their findings will reduce the number of variances, which in turn will help the TRCA with their request for a deferral. Secondly, the letter of review that's come in from the RNFP is interested in us doing a study for some roots around one of the trees, and that will give us a chance to get that completed as well. Our ambition is to reduce the number of variances that are being requested, and also to make sure that all of the authorities doing reviews have had all their questions answered.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCormick. And I believe that there's an agreement that this matter would be deferred to the specific date of the September 28th hearing, which should give you ample time to do all of that. Is that date has been agreed upon with staff? There's room on that agenda to place this matter on?
My understanding is that we'll give zoning enough time to complete their work, and we will be able to complete ours.
Right, but I just want to make sure that our staff has agreed that you can go on that agenda.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, this file will have to be passed on to a new application technician to decide when it'll be appropriate to put it on a new agenda.
Okay, so we're not putting on that agenda. I assume that'll be worked out. So, Mr. McCormick, you can get in touch with committee staff to decide on that date. It won't be to a specific date at this point.
That's all great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions for Mr. McCormick? We also have another speaker on the line, so let's hear from Justin Bernard of 93 Valecrest.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, he was registered. He is not on the line. Staff reached out to him, but he'll be re-notified once the item comes back.
Correct. So yeah, since we're not dealing with it, that's not a crucial issue. We just would have had his opinion on the deferral request. So, okay, committee members, motion to defer.
Danny Bellissimo moves for deferral.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Seconded for Danny's motion.
Neil Palmer.
Thank you, Neil. All in favor? Okay, the matter is deferred. Okay, the next application is item number 25 North Glen Avenue. This is an application to construct a one-story south side and an attached garage at the rear of the existing dwelling. There are 4 variances. We have an arborist report and 4 letters of support, and that's all we have. The agent for this application is Joe Dome.
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Dome.
Good morning.
Okay, would you like to just briefly address the committee? Just very straightforward application. We have the arborist report. I don't believe we have an urban forestry condition. And there doesn't seem to be anyone, 4 letters of support. Would you like to advise the committee of anything?
I can make a short presentation.
Okay, I don't think,
If required.
just for like a minute or so, just to introduce it and
Sure.
see if anyone has any questions for you. It looks like it has
Yeah.
Depth variances.
Yeah, sure.
So perhaps you can
So my
explain
name is
why.
Joe Dome.
Yeah, that's several meters over, so perhaps you can just go through that.
Yeah. So the purpose of this application is to allow for improved accessibility to the proposed garage from the house, as the owner is dealing with her mother's illness, which requires a large SUV and wheelchair. The side yard setback of the proposed garage is the same as the existing external garage, and as shown on the site plan A1, the remainder of the dwelling and the proposed one-story corridor, which is set back even further than the main dwelling, has a side yard setback of over 3 meters. Likewise, the 2 length and depth variances only pertain to the garage due to its depth being added to the main dwelling. And the dwelling itself, along with the addition, are well within the bylaw for depth, for length and depth. We have 3 letters of support because two of the letters of support from the same address, so 3 total, including number 3 NORTHGLEN, which is the direct neighbor on the south side. And as you've mentioned, we have no opposition. Also, planning hasn't submitted any objections to the application. And we feel the application before you today is reasonable and minor in nature, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dome. Committee members, any questions for Mr. Dome, or is someone ready to weigh in with a motion?
Danny Bellissimo would like to make a motion if no one has any questions.
Oh, sorry, question from Neil here. For the applicant, are you okay if we approve this, if it's conditional with the site plan? Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I have the same question, so all good.
Okay. So to tie it to be constructed as illustrated on the site plan would be what you would recommend as a condition. So someone ready to weigh in with a motion?
Danny Bellissimo would like to make a motion subject to it's attached to the site plan. Find the variances are minor in nature.
Okay, so that would be to be constructed as illustrated on the site plan with respect to the, normally we say what variance we're concerned, in this case it's the length.
Sure, it could be the length, that's fine.
Okay, that just
Yeah, the
helps
length,
the zoning staff
Yeah,
to know what the concern was,
yeah.
as opposed to being everything. Thank you. Seconded for Mr.
Sorry,
Bellissimo's motion.
I'll second that, but also in accordance with the side yard setback, I think,
Okay,
which meets with the existing garage.
thank you. So that's a friendly amendment. That's okay with you, Mr. Bellissimo?
Sure, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Dome. Okay, we're going to deal with the deferrals first. Okay, so let's deal with the deferrals. I believe we have a request. It looks like the request for deferral staff for item number 5, transportation was requesting, but in our additional materials, it appears that they are now okay with the application. Can we just confirm that we don't have to deal with item number 5 as a deferral issue?
Mr. Chair, it's David Mackay. I'm the planner
Yes.
for the applicant.
Yes.
We are requesting a deferral. Our client, unfortunately, they did it on waiver and they did not capture the variance to the Etobicoke zoning bylaw because they're from the United States and didn't realize the
Okay.
the dual nature of things. So we're requesting a deferral to the September 14th hearing to do a new notice with the revised variance.
Okay, well, let's hear from staff if that date is acceptable. I don't know if you've had any discussion and you're just requesting it, but yeah, so we had all this.
I did have discussions yesterday. So.
Right, so notwithstanding the transportation's issue seems to be resolved, you do have to refer because you did proceed by way of waiver and you are missing variances.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, there have been consultations with the timing to be rescheduled in September 14th is possible.
Okay, so to be deferred to a specific date, September 14th, committee members. Any questions for the applicant or for staff, or is someone ready to make that motion?
Danny Bellissimo would like to make a motion for deferral to September 14th as requested by the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. Seconder for that motion. Thank you, Mr. Komorik. All in favor? Okay, the matter is deferred. Next deferral is item number 10, 127 Strath. It's an application for a detached dwelling with an attached garage with 5 variances, and planning is requesting deferral for the to modify the proposal to be more in keeping with the general purpose of the zoning bylaw, and if not, we should refuse it. So the speaker for that application is William Hall.
This is William. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning.
Okay. And is the sound quality sufficient for you?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. To begin, did you want me to make a small presentation on this?
No, so just to confirm what I said, that this deferral is to, you're going to be modifying your proposal based on.
The deferral is, if I may speak,
Yes.
planning has suggested a deferral. My clients would like to make a presentation.
So are you opposed to the deferral?
We are opposed to the deferral.
Okay, in that case, Mr. Carvalino, let's, are we going to deal with this now, or should we then put this back in order? Because it's an
Mr.
opposed
Chair,
deferral.
the only other item that was on the agenda that's being requested for deferral by the applicants, item 17 on the morning agenda. So if we can put item 10 back onto in queue and deal with item 17, that would be our recommendation.
Okay, for sure, let's do that. I thought number 15 is a deferral. Sorry, 16 at 31 Hilldowntree, and not 17. Because in 17 we have revised highlighted notice with, you know, changes in the variances. They did a small reduction in the height, but is that a deferral, or is it King's George 17
Mr.
or
Chair,
is it 16?
It's item 17. Item 16 will be proceeding today.
It will? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so item number 17, 77 King George's. The agent is David Bronskill of Goodman's LLP. Mr. Bronskill.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. We had him on the line, but he seems to be missing now. Let me see if he's come in as a call-in user.
All right. Or maybe because he thought he was item number 17, he stepped away from the phone for a bit, because I did say I was going to go in order. Okay, so let's stand that down rather than sitting and waiting for Mr. Bronskill. We can deal with that, and perhaps when he is back, we can, Emma, you can let us know. Okay, so that one's a proceeding. 10, we're going to have, it's a disputed, the applicant does not want to defer, so we'll deal with that in due course. So let's go back to item number 3, 39 Queen Mary's Drive. This is an application to legalize and maintain the new detached dwelling that is currently under construction. A previous Committee of Adjustment application approved variances relating to lot coverage, gross floor area, floor space index, front yard setbacks, side yard setbacks, dwelling height, length, and height. And now the applicant is requesting 2 more variances to reduce the minimum rear yard landscaping from 50% to 11%, and the a driveway width variance from 3.2 to a width of 4 meters. I assume the main issue here is the soft landscaping and the associated use with a basketball court in the rear yard up to the property line. So we have on this application registered to speak Mr. Flynn for the applicant, the agent, as well as Stan Soda representing the neighbors at 35 and 37 Queen Mary's Drive. And as well, we have a lot of letters of opposition from 27, 29, 35, 37, 65, 56, and 42 Queen Mary's Drive. We have
where did that come?
Copy of the previous decision. We have lot grading certificate, arborist report, transportation has no objection. And I hear Mr. Flynn, I don't, perhaps I read out those 7 addresses for that people in objection to this. So Mr. Flynn, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, good morning. How are you?
I'm great. So I think we're going to need a fulsome presentation for you, correct, panel members? So, ball's in your court. No pun intended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an interesting application in that the neighbors who are in objection claim that it's noisy, there's swearing going on, the lights are bothering people, et cetera, et cetera. The people who are in support are saying the exact opposite. That they have had no experience with noise or swearing or even a lighting problem. And to some degree, the pools, there are 3 pools that are on Strath Avenue backing into this and abutting properties that create as much or more noise. The supporters also go on to speak to the fact that the applicant and their children have been very responsible about turning off the lights at a reasonable hour, keeping the noise as low as possible, not swearing, and entertaining the children of the neighborhood. So the committee will realize, of course, that we have a COVID emergency going on for the last 2 years, and this ended up being the only play space available because the parks were closed, et cetera, all the sports were canceled. And those people who have children thought this was a very beneficial thing.
Correct.
So you'll note that there are a number of supporters in writing, but I'd also like to point out that there is some question about whether or not these people on Mr. Soda's letter have actually authorized him to represent them. I can tell you that number 65, Mr. and Mrs. Barrett, are not opposed. And we've had long conversations with them. You'll note that one of the abutting neighbors is in favor. The other neighbor is not. I appreciate that.
Sorry, can you just interrupt? I just want to interrupt you for a second. 65? 65 what?
Number 65, Queen Mary's.
Okay, is that in proximity to the property? Or as close as some of the other?
Its proximity is, it's cornering at Strath, which is 4 houses away.
Okay. My question, please proceed. Continue. Sorry about that, Mr. Flynn.
Certainly. So the people who abut to the rear have not objected and they have no complaints. So what we have here is questionable opposition from some people. But if I can go through the list, you've got number 27, which is at Prince Edward, 6 houses away. You have number 29, Mr. Godfrey, 5 houses away. Number 35, Mrs. Murmur, 2 houses away. Number 37 abuts. Mr. and Mrs. Barrett. Sorry?
What are you trying to prove? That the neighbors that are objecting are...
The proximity of these people who supposedly are in objection.
Right.
Which I'm questioning whether or not they are, or even if they have authorized this representation on their behalf.
Okay.
So,
and you say there are you said there are pools, so there's as much noise from the pools as from the basketball court, or more.
Correct.
Okay, so they have
actually
the ball hits
the planning department is exactly of that opinion that pools create more noise than this sports court does.
So the ball hitting the backboard, unless they don't hit the backboard and every shot is a swoosh through the net, that doesn't create noise. The ball hitting the backboard.
Oh, it does create noise. It's just not as noisy as a swimming pool that's being used by 4 teenagers, for example.
Okay. That's your opinion. So let's...
well, it's not my opinion. That's planning's opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
So the planner on this one is Timur, and you'll note the planning has made no comment. Transportation has no objection. You have a number of people in support and speaking to the issues of noise and lighting. So, in my humble opinion, I think that this application meets the 4 tests. It does not create an unusual amount of impact on abutting properties. The use in hours of the day is very limited. So, I'll grant you the kids were home and continue to be home, but they're not playing on this thing 8 hours a day. Even when they have the friends from the neighborhood over, they don't play on this thing 8 hours a day. So they might be on the court 1 or 2 hours when they are on the court, and I'm not suggesting they're on the court every day. But the court is, by the way, permeable. The patio is not. Planning has actually visited the site and viewed it. They have no objection, and they have told the objector that they have no objection. So, you know, we will continue on that subject of the objection or not, but the letter from Mr. Soda says, for example, that there are no drawings on the website. There are drawings on the website. All of the requirements of an application have been met. So I would suggest to you that there is as much support or more than there is opposition. And this is actually, should be treated no differently than a swimming pool.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
So,
Flynn.
yes.
You want to wrap up? I've let you go over 6 minutes because I interrupted you and asked
Certainly.
a question. But can you wrap up, please?
All right, so I believe this meets the 4 tests, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, I have a question before we turn it over to panel members. Is there room, do they have a driveway? And could they not have put
Yes.
a basketball court in the front like most, you know, I can take judicial notice of the fact that most people have basketball courts in their front, either at the curb or in their driveway. Do they have a sufficient driveway at the front to accommodate this?
Well, they have a circular drive, and there's a city tree on the boulevard.
Okay.
A major city tree. So, you know, normally when you see a basketball net on a driveway, it's one net. It's not what you would call a sports court. And they're capable of playing other sports, not just basketball.
Right. Okay.
So, for example, they can set up hockey nets,
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Other.
So,
Yeah, ball hockey would be another thing that they could use when it's too cold to play basketball. Okay, committee panel members,
Right.
any questions for Mr. Flynn before we hear from the neighbor or the agent for the neighbors? No questions? Okay, so let's hear from Mr. Soda.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm from 65 Glen Avenue, and I'm representing the owners of 7 properties who are in opposition to the work completed at number 39. My full report is on file, but I'd like to give you a brief summary.
Yeah, before that, can you just, Mr. Flynn, raise some issue about your authority to be representing these people? So maybe you just want to touch on that briefly.
Okay. Okay.
Not just coming here
Number
because you're, you know, you have nothing to do today. I assume you're, you know, been retained to make these presentations by someone because you don't live in.
Right. The owners were gathered by the Dawsons, and they've given me this file, and all the owners that I have listed were in opposition. So that's all I can tell you on the case of support and opposition. So I believe they're all in opposition. The 3 that are in favor, 2 of which are one is across the road and the other has a garage in front. I would challenge whether they get a full impact from the effects of this basketball court. But can I proceed with
Yes,
my?
yeah, go ahead with your presentation, sir, now that we've cleared that up, okay? So, thank you.
Okay. Regarding item number 1 of the requested variances, we urge the committee to refuse a reduction of the 50% soft landscaping requirement in the backyard. It would have been better if a single hoop had been placed in the front, as in most situations. A reduction to 11% soft landscaping is not a minor variance. The committee has the authority to refuse this zoning infraction. I would like to give the committee some background which led to the completion of this basketball court. The drawings that Mr. Flynn alludes to call for a hard surface play area. No detail was provided. There is a commercial light, which is more appropriate to a parking lot. So that'll enhance play well into the evening, not just during the day.
Sorry, can you just, you said something about light, like can you indicate what kind of lights? Are there floodlights? Are they overhead lights?
It's an overhead light at the center of the court. It's approximately 20 feet tall, and it has 2 high-intensity lights at the top.
Okay, and it shines down, or it has some leakage of light, or it shines like directly down on the court?
It shines directly down on the court, but you can see the lighting from several houses away.
Okay.
The city was required to issue an order to comply because the work was completed without the knowledge of the inspector. We're concerned that a court of this size and proximity to the rear yards, which are supposed to be the quiet portion of the house, will impact the enjoyment of the neighbors. We're concerned by the noise, the bouncing, the light intrusion. An installation such as this is much more suitable to a community center. Now, Mr. Flynn says that the court's impervious. Well, they poured 3 truckloads of concrete. That's not impervious. That will lead to drainage problems. So the court is a hard surface, as is the patio. So there's only 11% soft landscaping. We're asking you to refuse this application.
Okay, thank you, sir. So yeah, so I was going to add that same issue. I'd heard Mr. Flynn's talk about the that it is, it's not impervious, and it's, but I read in your letter about the 3 things of concrete, so we'll hear from Mr. Flynn in that regard. I assume they put a softer rubberized surface on top of the concrete.
That's right.
If it's concrete below, then it's not impervious.
It's concrete below.
Okay. Okay, any committee panel members, any questions for Mr. Soda? Mr. Komarek?
I'll chime in if I may. Sir, is number 41 on your list of opposition as well?
41?
41 Queen Mary's Drive.
It is not on my list.
It's not. Okay, thank you. Just want to clarify. So it's just, but number 37 is, which is the other immediate neighbor. It's the 2 immediate neighbors that I'm most concerned about.
Yeah, I would.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I guess neighbors behind, which is probably the most directly affected, or, let's say 48, 50, and 46.
48, 46.
Strath, yeah. It's the ones in the general vicinity that share the backyard space. The sound does carry, I assume. Any other questions, panel members, for either speaker? We'll go back to Mr. Flynn for his rebuttal. Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, sir. The one thing I wanted to add was that the zoning inspector, and his name is Cam Singh, did inspect the property and had no issue. There is a grading plan which shows that the water is directed to the street, not towards the neighbors. And that has been approved by both building department and the zoning inspector. And the neighbors to the rear have a pool. So that's probably one of the reasons they're not objecting, is because 3 neighbors to the rear, and I can't give you the actual addresses, but there are 3 pools in the immediate vicinity on the Strath Avenue frontage. So from that perspective, you really have, if you treated this as if it was a pool, you have effectively 4 pools making noise, but not on a consistent basis and not late into the night.
Okay. Mr. Flynn, do you know the decibel level of a basketball hitting a backboard?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay. I do.
Oh, do you?
Can we, any other questions, or can we take it into, actually, Mr. Flynn, do you want to continue? I guess you have some more time if you want to continue responding, but no new information, please, in terms of Mr. Soda's submission to respond to that.
Well, to answer that last question, number 41 is in support. We have a letter on the AIC supporting the application.
Okay. Okay. And I assume some of the neighborhood kids do play at this. It's not just for their own use, which is a wonderful thing. Other than the impact. The issue of the committee is to judge the impact on the other neighbors, and whether I assume the inspector wouldn't have been concerned about the use. He's just concerned about the actual variances with the soft landscaping to 11%. Would that be?
And one neighbor was actually in opposition initially because it was a late application, because it was an after-the-fact application.
I see. Right.
And once they had seen the site and discussed it with the applicants, they actually had no objection.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Flynn. Panel members, any questions for either of the speakers, or are we ready for a motion? Mr. Komorik.
Okay, I'm going to chime in on this one, and I think I kind of agree with Mr. Flynn in regards to we need to treat this like a pool. In terms of what the use is, I don't think we can regulate that, but what I was concerned about was the 11% versus a 50%. But there are a number of backyards here that do have pools and do have large patios and are in a similar situation with regards to the amount of soft landscaping that's being provided. So in that regard, you know, I would find this to be minor. With regards to, you know, noise into late of the night, lighting and all of that, there are bylaw issues that can be addressed. Those issues should be addressed through bylaw enforcement, not through planning and zoning. And so for that reason, I believe the application is minor overall, and I would therefore like to move approval.
Okay, and I don't believe there are any conditions to that. Okay.
No.
So we have a motion, seconder for that motion. Mr. Palmer, all in favor? Opposed? The motion fails. Do I have a new motion? Ms. Reddick?
I'll make a motion to reject this application. I don't find that it's minor in nature nor meets the core test.
Thank you. Seconder for that motion?
Danny Bellissimo seconds the motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. The application is refused. Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Thank you, Mr. Sota. Next application is item number 4, 120 the East Mall. It's an application to permit a parking deficiency. There are 2 variances. And planning has no concern. Transportation has no objection. I think we have 4. Oh, it's a minimum rear yard setback. And we have the, can't read my notes. Anyway, the speaker of this application is Jim Saad. And there's no one else registered to speak, and there's no objection. The deficiency is, oh yeah, that's what I was reading. It's 37 parking spots down to 33, so it's a deficiency of 4 parking spots. Plus there's a rear yard setback of 0, measured to the garbage enclosure. Sorry about that. Mr. Saad?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you and committee members. Jim Saad. I am of Paradigm Architecture and Design, and we are the agents representing Second Harvest.
Okay. I don't think we need a presentation. Is there something you'd like to advise the committee before I see if the panel members have any questions for you?
Yes, thank you. No presentation necessary. I agree. I would just like to point out that the garbage enclosure is literally the only thing that is causing the rear yard setback not to be met. The rest of the building, which was an existing warehouse building that was modified, is well beyond that setback.
Okay. Committee members, any questions for the agent? And if no questions, is someone ready to weigh in with a motion? We have a
Danny Bellissimo would like to move approval. I find that the variances are minor in nature. It just affects part of the proposal of the garbage situation there.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. Seconder for that motion. Mr. Palmer, all in favor? The motion carries. The application is approved. Thank you, Mr. Sad. Item number 5 is 77 FIMA Crescent. It's an application, again, a parking deficiency to accommodate the newly constructed mixed-use building. In this case, the deficiency is from 132 spaces down to 52.
Sorry.
And that is the only variance. We have
Sorry.
Parking space plan.
Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this one's been
This was
deferred.
no?
Oh, okay. My mistake. My bad. Item number 6, 12 Connie Street. This is an application to construct a second-story addition over the existing garage. We have nothing whatsoever on file other than the survey and the plans filed with the application, and the speaker is Enzo Lacasano.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. Very straightforward application. Don't need a presentation. Would you like to advise the committee of anything before I see if panel members have any questions?
No, I have nothing to add at this time. It's very straightforward.
Yeah, it's just one side yard setback of, and I assume it's already existing. It's just being.
It's an existing condition with the garage. That's
Yes,
correct.
thank you. Committee members, any questions for Mr. Lacasano, or can someone weigh in with a motion?
I'm prepared to do a motion. I find the application to be minor and desirable, meeting the 4 tests, and therefore would like to move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Komorik. Seconder for that motion.
Danny Bellissimo.
Thank you, Danny. All in favor? Application is unanimously approved. Thank you, Mr. Lacasano. We'll see you again.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too. Okay, item number 7 is 113 Cornelius Parkway. And this is an application to legalize and maintain the existing detached garage in the rear yard. We have 2 variances, lot coverage and rear yard soft landscaping. We have a previous decision from September 2002, cover letter. We have an letter from the agent and the owner. We have photos, 8 letters of support, and TRCA has no objection, but that a permit is still required. And hold on, I think planning is recommending refusal of the rear yard soft landscaping variance from, that's what we have before us. And the speaker is Zoran Tiernanik,
yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Sorry
Mr.
about that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Okay. Good morning, sir. Yeah.
And we have, I said
So,
8 letters of support. We have TRCA. And can you just address this planning recommendation? They don't want to give you your soft landscaping.
Yeah, as you understand, we are dealing with a 16-year-old situation. The garage was built 16 years ago in 2004, and the client didn't even know that he doesn't have a permit because the contractor lied to him and told him that the permit for the house covers the garage, which was not true. So once you have a garage at the rear and you have a driveway going all the way through, and when you deduct the area of the garage, the footprint and the driveway, there is not much left anyway. And then this is Italian big family, and they put a patio. They didn't know what the maximum landscape is required. So the size of the patio was put to suit like a table and 12 chairs. So that's how it came up with a 31.5%. It's a 16 years old situation. So what the planning department is now asking is to spend like a $30,000-$50,000 to put some different paving at the back. Personally, I think it's a minor. They have 8 letters of support. My client's brother lives next door. They live in the area for 27 years, and they would like to stay there. And there is, after so many years, I don't see what is the impact to anybody.
So how did this come about? Maybe somebody, I don't even know how this came up. Did someone complain, or if it was done 17 years ago?
No, I think his brother is building the house next door, and my guess is that somebody from the city came, and that's how they find out, you know. Nobody have a clue that the garage is not without a permit. You know?
Right.
And the client paid the same architect, not me, the other architect he paid to do the garage and the house. And there are drawings with the same architect. Why he should pay an architect if he didn't want to get a permit, you know?
Okay, thank you. Panel members, any questions for the agent, or is someone ready to weigh in with the motion?
Neil Palmer, I'll move for approval. Variances requested appear minor in nature and meet the four tests in the Planning Act.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Seconder for that motion, please.
Danny Bellissimo seconds the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Bye now.
Okay. Next application is item number 8, 71 Silverstone Drive. We have the revised agenda page and a waiver with revisions to the plans. There was 7 variances. There are now 6. Variance 3 for overall height has been eliminated. Two of the other height-related variances have been reduced somewhat. We have revised plans, the previous decision, photos, 6 letters of support. Transportation has no objection. The speaker for this application is Kaushik Suthar.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, committee chairs and committee members.
Good morning. So I see
And I am
you've
the
made some changes here. We also have a covering letter from your client and from yourself. So you'd like to just briefly explain what happened here to result in these changes?
I'm the Kaushik Suthar and agent of the property owner. And this is actually the straightforward applications for the minor variance. Couple of the variants are existing conditions, and some are main wall height and soffit wall height. It's also related with the existing conditions. We submit the plans, but the planning department has a problem with the overall building height. So we reduce the building height and we bring the height within the 9.5 meter. And also we have reduce the soffit wall height, main wall height, because this is a split level house and the upper levels is 1.43 meter height from established grade. And we are proposing the first floor level to match with the existing upper floor level. So that's why we have the main wall height and the soffit wall height variance. And this is, I think, so is the existing conditions and minor in the natures. And that's it.
Thank you, sir. So I'd just like to clarify, because I think when I introduced the application, I read out the stuff we had on it for item 7. So what we do have here, in addition to all the materials filed with the application, are the revised plans, the revised zoning waiver, your revisions, a tree declaration. We have photos and 6 letters of support, and transportation has no objection. So on that basis, thank you for that presentation, sir. Does anyone have any questions for the agent? Or is someone ready to?
Danny Bellissimo has a question for the agent. A bit confused. You're saying it's some of these variances are existing condition, but the proposal is for a new detached dwelling. Are some of the existing walls remaining in place?
Yeah, we are keeping the footprint area remain the same. And this is the split level house. The backyard is upper level and the front is the lower level. So we take out the front portions and raise the foundations wall to match with the existing upper level. So that's why the variance for the first floor height.
Okay, so you're saying, just wanted to clarify because I'm losing you a little bit there. You're saying the existing foundation, which is the existing footing, is staying in place, and then you're building on top of that.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the agent? And if not, is someone ready to weigh in with a motion?
Danny Bellissimo would like to make a motion I find that the variances are minor in nature. And move approval based on the revised agenda page waiver that we received. Again, I don't see a date on here, so you'd have to help
What
me.
was up on the board? Yeah.
Yes, the one that's up on the board. It's
As revised.
variances. Pardon?
Just as revised.
As revised, yes. So it's 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are the 5 variances approved. 3 has been deleted. Thank you.
And
Thank you, Mr.
4
Bolson.
and 6 have been amended.
Yes. Mr. Kamara.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All in favor? Another unanimous approval. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Sardar. Have a great
Thank
day,
you.
sir.
Thank you very much. You too, bye now.
Our next application is item number 9, 28 Valiant Road. It's an application to construct a 2-story rear addition and a 2nd-story addition over the existing dwelling. And there are 9 variances. We have 2 letters of opposition. Urban Forestry is requesting a refusal. We have transportation with no objections. Planning has given us a report for information noting that the 2 side setbacks are due to the irregular shape of the lot and more or less an existing condition. And in the additional materials, we have a 24 Valiant in support. The speaker in this application is David Igelman. And as well, we have a neighbor from 26 Valiant registered to speak.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I just sound check
Yes, go ahead.
Zachary real quick? Thank you. Zachary, can you hear me? All right, you're unmuted right now.
Yep, I can hear you. Yep. Hi, how are you?
Okay, thank
we're
you.
gonna
We'll
put him
call
back.
on you
We're going to
later.
hear from him after we hear from the applicant. Thank you. Mr. Igelman, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members.
Good morning, sir. Let's, I guess you should give us a short presentation, given the fact that there's a neighbor here with objections. And I assume we have letters of
Yes, sir.
that neighbor, so you sort of know. Actually, the letters are from, let me see if it's one of them is from the speaker. Yes, it is. Zach and Irene, 26. Okay, so why don't you give us a short presentation of this application for a rear yard addition and a top-up.
Yes, sir. So through you, Mr. Chair, good morning. And my name is David Eagleman. I'm a planner at Design Plan Services. We've been retained by the property owners of 28 Valiant Road to present this committee of adjustment application in front of you today. The application has 9 variances associated under bylaw 569/2013. Before getting into the variances, I would like to note that there have been no concerns or objections raised by city planning staff or transportation services. I'm aware of Urban Forestry's comments regarding this application, and although they are recommending refusal, they do recommend standard condition number 1 if the committee were to approve this application today, and this condition is acceptable. Even with an approval of this application, a permit to injure or destroy any regulated tree will still be required prior to a building permit being issued. Regarding the variances, the lot coverage is proposed at 36% or 138.7 square meters, whereas 33% of the lot area or 127.3 square meters is permitted. The proposed lot coverage is a result of the unique reverse pie lot shape of the subject property, and the proposed dwelling will be consistent in terms of lot coverage with the number of dwellings within the neighborhood. The proposed lot coverage is only 11.4 square meters more than what is permitted as of right, and there have been a number of approvals for lot coverage within the neighborhood, including 24 Valiant Road, which was approved at 39%. The FSI is proposed as 0.7 times the lot area or 270 square meters, whereas 0.5 times the lot area or 192.9 square meters is permitted. The increase in FSI will result in an additional 77.1 square meters, which is approximately 415 square feet over 2 floors, which will have little to no impact on the existing streetscape along Valiant Road. The proposal is compliant with landscaping requirements as well as the rear yard setback requirement, and there have been a number of approvals for FSI on Valiant Road, as well as within the broader neighborhood, including the adjacent dwelling at 26 Valiant Road, which was approved at 286.7 square meters, or 0.62 times the lot area. 24 Valiant Road approved at 352.9 square meters, or 0.77 times the lot area, and 20 Valiant Road, which was approved at 288.4 square meters, or 0.63 times the lot area. Based on these approvals noted for both lot coverage and FSI, it is demonstrated that the proposed massing and build form is in keeping with the existing neighborhood characteristics, considering there are a number of larger dwellings within the neighborhood in terms of lot coverage and floor space. The proposed front yard setback is an existing condition on the subject property, and the proposed addition will not alter the existing front yard setback. The proposed east side yard setback is also an existing condition on the subject property, and the proposal will maintain the existing east side yard setback condition. The western side yard setback condition at the adjacent property at 26 Valiant Road is currently at 0.49 meters. The proposed west side yard setback is taken from a pinch point on the garage, and a majority of the dwelling is actually compliant with the 3-meter west side yard setback requirement. This variance is due to the unique lot configuration and will have little to no impact on the surrounding neighborhood, considering that the west side of the dwelling is facing the street. The proposed main pedestrian entrance is only 20 centimeters higher than what is permitted as of right, and the front exterior main wall height is proposed at 7.9 meters, whereas 7.5 is permitted, and the overall height is proposed at 9.98 meters, whereas 9.5 is permitted. The proposed exterior main wall height is only 40 centimeters above what is permitted, and the proposed overall height is only 48 centimeters above what is permitted. The proposed ceiling heights for the first and second floor are of a modest 10 feet and 9 feet respectively, and there have been a number of approvals within the neighborhood for overall height as well as main exterior wall height, including 24 Valiant Road, which was approved at a height of 10.13 meters and an exterior main wall height of 7.25 meters, 20 Valiant Road, which was approved at a front exterior main wall height of 7.63 meters, and 115 West Rose Avenue of 7.81 meters. Based on these approvals, it is demonstrated that the proposed front exterior main wall height of 7.9 meters and the proposed overall height of 9.98 meters is in keeping with the surrounding neighborhood context, and the proposed build form and massing will respect and reinforce the existing neighborhood characteristics. Based on the provided justification, I am of the opinion that this proposal fits in with the existing and planned context for the neighborhood, is consistent with the redevelopment trends along Valiant Road and the broader neighborhood context, and for these reasons, I believe this application represents good planning and meets the 4 tests under Section 45(1) of the Planning Act. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Exactly 5 minutes. Did you rehearse at home? It was exactly 5 minutes. Anyway, thank you. Before we go, does anyone have
I've been doing this for a while now.
Okay. Committee members, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Eagleman before we hear from the neighbors? Okay. So I've read the 2 neighbor letters, and we're going to hear from one of the 2 neighbors objecting. I'd just like to point out again to committee and to the neighbor and to the applicant that we deal with, as I said in my opening remarks, with planning issues here. That's the matters we hear about. There's a lot of talk about this. It looks like the same applicant appears to have built a house on the other side, and there's issues dealing with construction issues and noise, and they're dealt with by the building department. If neighbors have problems during construction, they should call 311 or call the building department and or the police if necessary, depending. And that's all I have to say about that before we hear from Mr. Zachary Bridgegor-Linsky, who is the speaker on this.
Not bad, not bad.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, committee.
Yeah, I've
Good
read
morning,
your letter, sir.
Chairman.
Just want to tell you that the committee members, our mandate here is to deal with the Planning Act. Our mandate is under the Planning Act, and we deal with planning issues, the issues that you're mentioning in the first paragraph of your letter. I'm not, there's something that really we're not really been dealing with, but there are methods to deal with these issues that you deal with in your letter. Okay?
For sure.
We need to hear about the built form issues and your concerns with that.
100%.
Thank you.
So just super quick, not too much planned. I just want to say that I speak for myself. my mother and behalf of all of my neighbors when I say that these variances are not minor and they're very extensive. Now, the house that is in support of them, which is 24 Valiant Road, which was privately sold from owner Anthony Tarantella to these neighbors, they're not really affected because it's 2 houses down, and that's the reason why they're in support. Everyone else is truly against this. The neighbors directly behind us are very old. The husband recently passed away, and she wasn't able to join the meeting or send her letter of objection. So I'm here to speak on her behalf. And I just want to say I really want to focus on so request variances 4 and 5, which has to do with the east side lot and how close it really is. Builder Tarantella was building a house on West Rose and actually damaged the sidewall of a house next to it, never paid to fix it. And we are truly worried for our own side lot. It's very close already. We don't want it getting any closer, and we'd rather it just become wider truly, because it really is a problem. Secondly, we're looking at issues 7 and 8. Now, this is the height of the house. We find this to be a really big problem. As Tarantella's speaker on behalf of him said earlier, it's only 40 centimeters, but really this is not minor. 40 centimeters is a lot, and total height of the house, 48 centimeters is a lot, and it blocks a lot of sun, messes up views for everybody in the neighborhood, and it really is just not nice for the whole entire neighborhood. So that's kind of what I'd like to say, and I hope you guys can understand where we're coming from as neighbors.
Okay, I got a quick question, Zachary. The side yard setback, are they building, and this is not a new build, it's a top up and a rear yard 2-story addition, right? So are they building as an existing setback? They're building just straight up, and it's obviously it's going further back and up, but are they already at 0.46 currently?
Yep, and they're going to be pinching it a little farther in. It's currently at 0.5, so they're going to be pinching in farther as it goes as well. But I think it should be expanded. I don't think that's the retaining wall that should be staying.
Okay. Panel members, any questions for the neighbor before we move back to Mr. Eagleman for his rebuttal? Okay, Mr. Eagleman, back in your court.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, regarding the east side yard setback, if you can, if the technician can please pull up the survey, you will see that the existing side yard setback is at 0.46, not 0.5. And while I can dwelling at 26 Valiant
David,
Road
David, you just back up. We just didn't hear you for about 5 seconds. So
no problem.
Said something in the middle.
No problems. Yeah, I was just saying that the existing side yard setback for the subject property is at 0.46 meters, not 0.5, and the adjacent dwelling, as you can see on the survey, is at 0.49 meters. So we are maintaining the existing east side yard setback. We are not increasing or decreasing the setback.
Okay, that's all. Anything else to add?
And in regards to the height, there have been a number of approvals within the neighborhood for overall height. There are a number of new builds that are typically at above the maximum permitted height, and the proposed height will have little to no impact on sun and shadow further than what the bylaw already contemplates.
Okay. Panel members, any questions for either Mr. Eagleman or the neighbor at 26, or is someone ready to weigh in with the motion?
Danny Bellissimo would like to weigh in with the motion. I find that the site is just starting off the bat is a difficult site because of its long wedge shape, and I can understand how majority of the variances are connected to that. It's unfortunate, but this is an existing legal lot. And I noticed that the neighbor to the one side next to it is also a two-story house. So I don't find that the height issue is as great as made by the opposition. So I'd like to move for approval. I find that the variances are minor in nature. I don't believe there are any. There's a condition. Is there a condition of forestry on this one?
Yes, it was a refusal.
Yes.
So
To deny. I'm not going to put that in my motion. I just like it to go through as presented in terms of the number of variances, which are 9 variances in total.
thank you, Mr. Bellissimo.
If I can second with what I hope to be a friendly amendment. I believe it's forestry condition 1 that we're looking to impose. And also I would suggest, and I'll ask Danny if he's okay with this, in order to address the neighbors' concerns, that we tie this to the site plan that was submitted on June the 8th of 2021, so that way we're not giving blanket approval on the side yard setbacks, that it represents just those pinch points.
I'm agreeable to that. The applicant obviously talked about that side yard, and I'm assuming that that'll be fine. So yes, we'll tie it to the site plan, and I'll be okay with your amendment to forestry to number 1, I believe you said, right?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay, very good. Good seconding with the friendly amendment. So that's before us. Any all in favor? Okay, we don't have Sophie on the screen now. We do. Okay, unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Eagleman, and thank you, Zachary. Okay, actually, before we go on, is Mr. Bronskill back? So he doesn't have to wait. Item number 17 was a deferral request. We still don't have David Bronskill on the line? Okay. Okay, the next application is item number 10, 127 Strath Avenue. And this application was originally going to be a deferral request from planning to modify the proposal to be more in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, or otherwise to refuse. But I believe it is staff were hearing this, as there's been in the additional materials we have letters of no objection from, I think, 5 neighbors and an agent covering letter. So are we now proceeding on this application? Staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The deferral request was only from community planning, not from the agent.
Okay, so in other words, we do have a deferral request from planning, but the applicant wishes to proceed. He's objecting to that deferral request. He wants to proceed. He's not planning on making proposals to be more in keeping with the zoning bylaw as mentioned by community planning. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. That's correct, sir.
Okay, so planning is still, their memo still stands that it should either be deferred or refused, correct? Just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and it's up on the screen as we speak.
Okay, and we only have the one speaker, the agent William Hall. Mr. Hall, welcome. Just to say, this is a detached dwelling with an attached garage with 5 variances, and we have no objection from transportation. And we have the planning defer or refuse report. We have urban forestry requesting condition number 1. Mr. Hall.
Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you now. You want to proceed
Okay,
with
great. Thank
a
you very much.
presentation, please, in light of the planning recommendation. Explain why you don't wish to defer or modify this proposal, and why it should be granted. Yep. Thank you.
Yes. My name is Bill Hall. I'm the owner of Architrave Design Architect here in the Kingsway. And I'm representing Deanne and Michael Copeland, who are the owners of the property. I forwarded a cover letter, and I wanted to know whether the committee's had a chance to read that and whether I should expand upon it, or how would you like me to proceed?
Committee members, would you like, we had in the additional materials the cover letter from the agent, which Emma has just put up, kindly put up on the screen. Would you like Mr. Hall to make a presentation on this application?
Danny Bellisman would like some clarification because planning is opposing it, so I would like to hear from him about that.
Certainly, yes. Sure, no problem. Let me just run through the basic background to this design and this application. One thing I wanted to stress, I mean, I understand planning's rationale for any consistent neighborhoods, and I'd like to address some of the issues that they brought forward. And in discussion with my clients, the idea of deferral, we got this letter 2 weeks ago. The idea of deferral was discussed, but we wanted to at least have a conversation with committee and see if we can shed a different light on the issues raised. Planning has generally, in conversation with planning, general concerns were size of coverage, size of FSI, and also the rear yard setback. The rear yard setback seemed to be the item of major concern, and I will focus on that in a minute. But the lots at the north end of Strath, McGinty, and on just the surrounding immediate neighborhood are probably the smallest in the Kingsway. And I have been doing many houses in Sunnyland and the Kingsway for 40-foot wide lots for many years, and was very surprised to realize we were going to come right up to the rear yard setback. During the design process, we did our very best to maintain all front side yard setbacks, and it was just exceedingly difficult. We were into the process of literally shaving inches out of rooms to make a home fit here. This is not the size of many of the homes you will see on. I'm designing on Kingsgrove, Kings Garden, you know, where you will see FSIs of 0.88 times coverage. This is a significantly smaller home. And I wanted to also stress that the bulk of the home, the two-story portion of the home, does meet the setback requirements. The only part where we transgress is a one-story kitchen bay, which sticks up approximately the depth of a kitchen counter. Now, as I said, during the design process, it was very difficult to make the rooms function correctly. And it was my suggestion to the clients that this was one area where perhaps there could be a minimally invasive intrusion into the setback. And this breakfast bay is, as I say, 1 story tall. From planning point of view, I appreciate the numbers, but in terms of impact on the surrounding neighborhood, I don't think it's really a numbers issue that I'd like to have the committee consider this under. It's an impact issue. And the backyard is essentially surrounded by hedges, so there is you can't even see any of the neighbors regardless. But even if the hedges weren't there, this is 1 story, about 2'10" projection. And there is no shading on the property to the north. There is no loss of privacy, you know, on any of the surrounding property rear to the south. And as you note in your preface, we have 5 ladders of support, and most importantly, the property directly to the north, the one that would be possibly affected by this, is in support, as well as the property 1 further north. The numbers we have used are not setting precedent by no means. As I mentioned in my letter, I just able to research 3 properties, and the first one in 2016, 21 McGinty, is a lot exactly the same size, and the numbers are almost identical to what we are proposing today. We have 131 Strath, 2 to the north. The numbers are almost the same. And 123 Strath, the south, again, similar numbers. And I could go on, there are others.
Yeah, Mr. Hall, can you please wrap up, please? You're over 5 minutes.
Okay, I don't think precedent is the issue here. And I think that in terms of actual real world impact, the impacts are minimal to non-existent.
Okay, thank you. So your position is that you don't look at, in this case, at the numbers, but you look at the impact, and that there is none. You have 5 letters of support. Committee members, any questions for Mr. Hall, or someone who weigh in with a motion? Mr.
have a question if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
My only concern around this was the rear yard setback as well. It's not something that generally I like to see approved. But I understand the situation here. So my question to the applicant is if we were to tie a potential approval to a site plan so that it's understood that we're accepting this because of that bump out only, would that be an issue?
That would not be an issue. We'd be more than happy to see that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so no other questions. Mr. Komorek, why don't you weigh in with that motion?
Okay, well then I would like to add another preface. Again, I'm reluctant to approve rear yard setbacks, but given that there are no objectors to this proposal and the agent is willing to accept that we tie this to the site plan drawings in order to justify why we're, you know what, too wordy. Let's just say, I believe it does meet the 4 tests. Would tie it to the site plan drawings, and I would propose approval. Thank you.
Okay,
Oh, any other?
Urban
No forestry?
Yeah, the number 1.
Okay, yeah, add that as well, please.
Thank you. So, Mr. Komorek, just to clarify, to construct as illustrated in the site plan with respect to the rear yard setback or the distance. That's, we like to say which variance.
Correct. Yeah, I just want to address the rear yard setback issue by tying to the site plan.
Okay, thank you. We have a second for Mr. Komorek's motion.
Danny Bellissimo seconds the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. All in favor? Okay, another unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Hall. With the committee's indulgence, suggest we take a 10-minute break. I have to go outside and warm up. It's cold in here. Okay, that motion is also unanimous, just to be consistent. Okay, so we'll return in 10 minutes to do the balance of the morning items, and if we can get a hold of Mr. Bronskill, we'll deal with item number 17's deferral request first. Thank you.
David Bronskill, can you hear me? David? David Bronskill, can you hear me? I can hear some muffling on your end, but I can't hear any actual words. David Bronskill, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, we're going to do your item as soon as we return back from the break, okay?
Okay, I won't wander away again. My apologies.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, we on stream. We're ready to go. Okay. So let's deal with item number 17, which is the we have a deferral request, 77 King George's Road. We have a revised yellow notice page. This is for a detached dwelling with an attached garage with 7 variances. Actually, it's now been revised to 6 variances. The height was reduced slightly to 10.15, 10 meters down from 10.15, whereas 9.5 is permitted. And the agent for the applicant is David Bronskill.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Apologies for missing the call of my name before. I had wandered away as you were going through the agenda items.
Okay, no worries.
We are here, sir, to request a deferral. As staff may have indicated to you, my understanding is that the public notice was lacking an additional variance. It's not the result of any changes to the plans, but my understanding is it's the height variance under the old Etobicoke bylaw, and it wasn't included on the notice. And as you well know, sir, we can't simply add that variance. We'd run into some notice issues, so we're here having to request the deferral. I should quickly say, Mr. Chair, we greatly appreciate frankly, the transparency of city staff in terms of how they identified this and dealt with it with us. It was very professional. So I just wanted to go on the record indicating we are appreciative of the way they handled this. So we are here requesting a deferral. Our hope was, if possible, coming back on September 14th, if there's room on the agenda and or timing for the notice permits, but obviously we're in the hands of staff and the committee on that.
Okay, let's check with staff then on that before we, I see you have like an overview. You have 19 letters of support on this application. We had a presentation, transportation is okay. We have an arborist report. So staff, are we okay for September 14th? Or is...
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff has consulted with the property owner and we are good to go for September 14th.
Okay. Committee members, any questions for Bronskill, or is someone ready to weigh in with a motion of deferral?
Anybody listening would like to make a motion for deferral? Okay. As requested by the applicant.
Okay. Seconder for that motion? Ms. Reddick? All in favor? Okay, the matter is deferred. Thank you, Mr. Bronskill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And thanks again to staff, Mr. Carvalino. We appreciate it.
Okay, our next application, we're going to hear items 11 and 12 together, 52 Simpson and 50 Simpson. They're both for construct new detached dwellings with attached garage. I believe they both have 4 variances. We have a letter of opposition on application 12 from 48. We have transportation, no objection, but there's a statement, and I want to get staff's opinion, but the applicant must consult with other city divisions to ensure that there are no other related variances related to drainage or any structural issues regarding the height and slope of the garage. So I don't know if that's a request for condition. We'll hear from staff on that. And although they are different owners, so it looks like we have the same agent or construction that they're going to be, but there are different owners for these 2 properties, but they're very similar. Speaker on this application is Chris Marchese. No other speakers. Mr. Marchese, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and fellow committee members. Chris Marchese here, address 900 the East Mall, Suite 300. I'm here to present the application on behalf of the property owners for 50 and 52 Simpson Avenue.
Okay, so yeah, I also mentioned there is an urban forestry conditions 1 and 2 on 11 and urban forestry 1 on number 12. So panel members, would you like a presentation from Mr. Simpson, Mr. Marchese? Or if not, is
there anyone, sorry, is there anyone presenting an objection or concern?
No, sir.
Okay.
So we have, actually, we have number 50 in support. Well, obviously, they're in support of each other's applications. So 50
Because
is
I think that there wasn't a letter of objection from number 48. and
Yes.
Perhaps the applicant can address that.
Yeah, no problem. Through you, Mr. Chair. The numbers are a little bit different for both, but for the property where there's opposition in regards to the setback is actually being improved on the subject property. For 50 Simpson, if you pull up the survey, you'll see that the existing east side yard setback is at 0.55 meters at the front main wall and 0.47 at the rear main wall. And this proposal is actually increasing the side yard setback to 0.61 meters along that eastern side property line. So the condition is being improved compared to what's currently existing on the subject property today.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. Can we go to questions, or does anyone? Sorry, Mr. Chair, it's up.
Yeah, go ahead,
I'm
Mr. Kumar.
jumping into your job right now. Sorry.
Okay, no, go ahead. You have any question? Go ahead.
I do have a question, and it pertains to the application number 11, variance number 3. I have a concern over the extent of that variance, and I think that variance comes about because of the different style of roof. I believe in the application number 12, that variance doesn't come up. So I understand that the massing of both are very similar, but one is going to look quite differently. And I am concerned about allowing a precedence of that magnitude as set out in variance number 3. If you could address that, please.
Yeah, no problem. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to be clear that there's no overall height variance for this flat roof. In a lot of zones in the city of Toronto, we'll see a height requirement at one number and a flat roof requirement at a lower number. The flat roof height requirement is the same, so the massing is expected through the zoning permissions in this zone. Furthermore, I would like to note that established grade is 1.09 meters below the actual grade of the subject property. Therefore, the variance is reading 9.16 meters, but above grade, the exterior main walls will only be 8.07 meters. So I think the number is a little increased and drastic based on where established grade is to the average grade, but I can't say certainty the average from the grade of the property to the highest point, we are at 8.07 meters, not 9.16 meters, but it's just due to the calculation of that measurement based on bylaw definitions that it's being taken from 9.16 meters.
Okay, no, I accept that. I guess my only point is that you could have avoided that to a great degree by just staying with the same style as the other house, but I guess your client may have had a different opinion on that. So
they're
understood.
two different clients.
Chair, that is correct. We have different clients here. One that wanted a more contemporary flat roof design, and we tried to design it to minimize the variance while getting their most desirable design on that dwelling. And that was the result of the flat roof for that individual 52 Simpson Avenue.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Marchese? And if none, is someone ready to weigh in with a motion? I guess we'll deal with number 12, like we'll deal with them in order. I mean, we do two separate motions. So firstly on number 11 and then on 12.
Danny Bellissimo would like to make a motion for approval. I find that the design, when you look at the interior, is not exaggerated in terms of sizes. It's open space concept, very minimal in terms of what's being offered inside. So I don't think they're overstating their requirements in terms of design. So I'd like to move for approval of the variances, conditional, I believe there's condition from forestry.
Yeah, they're slightly different on both, Mr. Bellissimo. So let's deal with 11 first, 52 Simpson. That one has urban forestry conditions 1 and 2.
Yes, sorry, that's what I'm dealing with, is just number 11, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
So that's the urban forestry conditions 1 and 2 and no other conditions, correct? So let's deal with that one. Seconded for Mr. Bellissimo's motion on number 11.
It's if I just wanted to be clarification around the transportation comment. You indicated you were going to clarify whether that was a
Oh,
condition.
yeah, that's right.
or
So,
not.
Mr. Carvalino, thank you, Ms. Reddick, for mentioning that. Is that a condition or that's just an advisory comment from transportation?
But Mr. Chair, the memo clearly states they have no objection, but they do preface it by saying that other divisions may have their own views on the entrance to the garage. Typically through the building permit process that would occur. Sometimes Toronto Water might have an issue, but they don't get to review these applications because of the implications of stormwater on basement floodings and such, but we have to rely on the building division for this. It's not a condition.
Okay, so it's just a little unusual. Usually don't see that, so that's why I just wanted to raise it, and thank you to Ms. Reddick. Okay, so we're in the middle of a motion. I guess Sophia has seconded that motion with that question. So all in favor, that one's Urban Forestry 1 and 2. Okay, unanimous approval. I can't see Mr. Komarek. I assume he's there. All in favor? Okay, unanimous approval. And now for item number 12, 50 Simpson. Mr. Bellissimo, same motion with variance with urban forestry condition number 1.
Sorry, I just want to have a quick look at the site plan. Someone else can weigh in the meantime. I haven't had a close look at this design interior-wise. Thank you.
Right, so that's the one that we have the one objection letter from, and it's only urban forestry 1. So are you prepared to make the same motion if you've had a chance to review?
Okay, yeah, the interior is more or less the same, so it's not an extravagant design layout, and I find it fits and meets the requirements of the local street area. So I would like to move approval of the variances. There's also a condition from forestry on this one too, yes.
Yeah, this one is just
by
condition
forestry.
1. Thank you.
Yes, condition 1.
Seconder for Mr. Bellissimo's second motion. Ms. Reddick, thank you. All in favor? Okay, unanimously approved. Thank you, Mr. Marchese. You have your applications both been approved.
I got the next one as well, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And don't go away, Mr. Marchese. I see you're the agent on the next application, which is item number 13, 89 Lake Crescent. And this is an application for a new new covered front porch and a 2-story rear addition. There are 4 variances. We have support from 91, 77, 96, 90, 88, 92. We have objection from 87. And the neighbor, the only concern of the neighbor was he was concerned about a blanket variance of 0.35 in variance number 1. And I think that can certainly be remedied, as we often do, by tying it to a plan. Also complains about some no environmental studies, etc. And that's what we have on that application. The speaker again is Mr. Marchese, and we have the neighbor from 87 Lake Crescent scheduled to speak, who wrote the letter of objection. So back to you, Mr.
So, yep, thanks, Mr. Chair. Chris Marchese again, 900 the East Mall, Suite 300. On this application here, we have 4 variants in front of us, but they're actually all either existing already or being improved on the subject property. Before getting to the variances, I would also like to note that there's been no formal comments in opposition from any municipal departments in regards to this application. In regards to variance 1 pertaining to the side yard setback, I would kindly ask staff pull up the existing site plan of the subject property. It's that one right there, perfect. So as you can see on this site plan, you have the hatched area on the rear of the property, and you have an existing side yard setback that goes from 0.46 to 0.29 at the furthest pinch point where the deck is. The hatched area is being removed, and the setback from the remaining dwelling is at 0.35 meters. We are if you can now go to the proposed site plan, what we are planning on doing is just jotting it out, maintaining that existing setback at 0.35 meters for just a small portion of the dwelling. And then we'll be jotting it in further away from the property line to a compliant 0.94 meters where 0.9 is requested. So the side yard setback is drastically being increased on this property. The setback in the eaves variance is just for that small portion right there, connecting to the existing exterior main wall along that side. And then both of those performance standards will be compliant for the remainder of the dwelling. In regards to variance 3 of the porch, that is existing and not being touched. It's lined up with the front main wall. The only changes is there's just going to be a covered porch from the top. Right now, the porch is fully enclosed. They will be opening all the sides. And if you go to the elevations, if committee is willing to see it, you'll see that we're actually reducing the massing on this by opening up the front and the side walls of this proposed and existing front porch. So based on that, all these variants are existing. We're improving the setback along the neighbor side at 87 Lake Crescent. I'll be happy to hear concerns and answer any further questions from either the opposition or committee at this time. But I'm of the opinion that the application meets the 4 tests under section 45(1) of the Planning Act and should be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Marchese at this time, or we'll hear from the neighbor? Okay, Suzanne Corey of 87 Lake Crescent, and we have the letter and an email.
Hi, Mr. Chairman and committee. Thank you very much for your time today. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, perfect. Loud and clear. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. My name is Suzanne Corey. I own the property, 87 Lake Crescent. I did file an objection for 2 reasons that actually I think the second reason wasn't really addressed up front, but the first one was, yes, the east lot side, the side line. I recognize the request to maintain the existing red structure, which is the original 100-year-old structure of the house, plus a request to increase the back by 4.2 feet to accommodate a staircase. And I heard Mr. Marchese about it moving west to be compliant, and that's great. My concern, one concern is that what they've asked for is a blanket to go all the way along the entire east line perimeter. That's really intrusive. And I would really request that there's some tightening up around the language to that, because as you can see, the houses are very close, right? And that is extremely detrimental. And it doesn't provide, like, I don't think the bylaws of the city are such that they want people to have no access to their side yard to repair housing and whatever. So
yeah,
I would
Ms. Corey, could I just interrupt you for 1 second? As I stated in my opening remarks with respect to this matter and your issue about a blanket, we think we agree with you. And I think typically what we do to avoid that is that in the event of an approval, I think it would be reasonable, given that, for it to be tied to the plan that showed those pinch points, and it wouldn't be a straight blanket variance all the way down the lot. I don't think that's what Mr. Marchese will respond. I don't think that's what he's intending. That's not what's before us. And your concerns can be addressed by tying that to the plan. So are you less concerned if it's the existing pinch points?
For that pinch point, yes, but I do have a second concern about the other variant.
You can go on with that, but I'm just wanting to clarify that in terms of that, if you're okay with those pinch points, that's an easy fix to keep the
yes, sir. I agree. Yep, absolutely. If you can tie those pinch points into the plan, I am fine with that. I recognize the realities of living in a city. So the second issue I have is with respect to the eaves. You know, you can see on the drawings, and yes, Mr. Marchese made the point that the eaves are where they are already, right? They're situated 1 inch beyond, like just 1 inch off of the east side lot. And what they're planning on doing, from what I can read on the drawings, is even though the house is going to be jutting inwards or towards the west, the roof isn't going to follow. They want to maintain that straight roof line along the east side. And my issue there is that eaves line is incredibly detrimental. It's spilling everything off the roof onto the sidewalk, onto my side lot. And I want to be clear about the side lot. My side lot is no access, no easements. It's my personal side lot. I haven't fenced it in yet, but it is a personal side lot that I use. It pools with the water. It gets messed up with all the stuff falling off the roof. The existing design of the roof is not very effective. It basically slants down. There are no gutters, no easement, no leaf guards, no water downspouts on the east side of the perimeter. It just slides down the roof, and then in the wind and in driving rain, it actually pools and hops onto my side, and it makes a complete mess. I'm concerned about penetration to my foundations. I'm concerned about concrete damage, which I'm already seeing. I'm concerned about just the general mess. It's unsafe. I use that walkway. That's my only walkway from the front to the back of my house. So it's actually unsafe for me when those conditions are present. And I would really appreciate it if they could please move that roof line further to the west side. I mean, it doesn't need to be jutting out 3 feet and 1 inch over top of the side lot line like that. That's a huge concern for me. I don't understand the logic behind it. And I did ask the homeowner why it was like that. And the homeowner gave me a response that basically said, it's already there. But that doesn't really give me a bona fide explanation as to why it's absolutely necessary to keep it like that. And if it's a matter of aesthetics, it's aesthetics versus damage and detriment and unsafe conditions for someone who's living right next door to them. So that is a really big concern for me, sir. And that's what I wanted to raise to yourself and to the committee.
Okay, thank you. We'll have Mr. Marchese respond to your concern, and we'll see if committee members have any questions for you. Are you done now? You finished what you've had to say?
Yes, sir. I've said what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any panel members have any questions for Ms. Corey at this point? Or we can hear back from Mr. Marchese and his rebuttal. Okay, Mr. Marchese?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Ms. Corey, for the comments. I'll be happy to address them. First and foremost, through you, Mr. Chair, no objection to a condition tying this proposal to the site plan if the committee deems it necessary to avoid any blanket issues on the side yard setback. I just want to make it clear in regards to the side yard setback at 87 Lake Crescent. Ms. Corey actually has 2 non-compliant side yard setbacks on a new build house that presents to be much larger than what's being proposed on this application. In regards to the eaves are going to be in the same spot for that small portion of the dwelling. Once the dwelling jots in, we're not going to have a roof line that's going to extend from the 0.9 all the way over based on my review of the roof plan. And then at the end of the day, during the building permit process, the applicant will be responsible to make sure that all runoff is maintained on the subject property. And that will be the case through the building permit process. So I think that answers both of her questions, but I'll be able to answer any further questions from the committee if needed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Marchese. Any panel members, any questions for Mr. Marchese or for the neighbor, or is someone ready to make a motion?
Yeah, Neil Palmer. Had a question about for Mr. Marchese, for the second floor plan. Is it wider? Is the house wider on the second floor than on the first floor? It appears to be 15 feet 9 inches on the second floor. On the first floor, 14 feet 4.5 inches. Can you just clarify what's going on with the second floor?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure where Mr. Palmer is identifying those dimensions. I just want to make sure I'm correctly looking at the right thing before I provide any information.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm looking at drawing number S3 and comparing it to drawing S2.
Okay, are you looking, the package had existing and proposed. So S3 on the proposed compared to S2, 14.
Existing, okay, you're right. Existing, you're right, you're correct. Proposed, you're right, okay. Floor.
It's slightly extended past. If you look at the rear elevation, like ever so slightly, but nothing.
Sorry, I'll withdraw that question. I think looking at that, yeah, that clarifies it. But then the roof plan extends. I think your neighbor's concerns about the roof plan, are you able to maybe adjust the roof plan to have that jut in? On S12.
So what I'm seeing here is that it is jutting in with the property line. The gray is there but it's just showing where the roof would be. But if you look at that line there, you see that jutta where the property would jut in, and then you have more of a separation at 0.3 there for the eaves, which is the compliant eaves setback as per zoning requirements. So once again, the eaves setback is just for that portion connecting to the existing wall, and then it's jotting in right where city staff is showing it, based on my interpretation of this plan, to a compliant eaves setback.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
And furthermore to that, through you, Mr. Chair, there have been close to 10 approvals at 0.00 eaves for the entire portion of the wall. This is an existing condition that we're improving drastically compared to being proposed compared to what's existing on the property.
Okay, I'm okay now.
Danny Bellis would like to ask some questions when you're free. Could staff put on, so you have the drawing there, S12. Mr. Marchese, I'm really confused now on your explanation of the roof line. Is that shaded area the edge of the roof?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not the architect on this, and I don't have the exact answer. The way I'm interpreting this plan is that you have that property line, and then you have a solid line that's jotting in, and that is the eaves that's going to be there, and the roof is the second dashed line that's going to be there, the foundation walls, and then you have where it says 1 foot 0.304. That's where the eaves is going to be located. So from the jot out in, that's the hard line is the eaves. It's going to be 0.3 away from the property line, which is compliant.
Could I ask staff to zoom in on that shaded area? Would that be possible? That's not my interpretation in reading the drawings. Those rectangles underneath that shaded area to the top of the picture, those two which are just highlighted there, those are soffit vents. So the soffit vents means there's a roof there. So I think your interpretation is incorrect. So and also,
fair enough, Mr. Chair. I do actually see that. I think
the neighbor has a point on that one. Could staff bring on S14? Bring up S14, which is the rear elevation. And can you zoom in on, excuse me, zoom on the second floor? Zoom in on that section there. This drawing seems to be in complete contradiction to the roof plan because it does show a jog in at the addition. Although there's some really weird hatching going on to the right, which come down. I have no idea what that is on the far right of that second floor. Can you explain what that is?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have the details on that second floor jot out. I am starting to see a little bit of a discrepancy as you're mentioning, Mr. Bellissimo. I don't have a detailed explanation in terms of what that extent.
There's a contradiction in the drawing, so I'm gonna have a difficulty with that. And I can appreciate what the neighbor is saying because I've seen situations where you have a storm and the neighbor's roof water goes on to other people's roof waters, but roof eaves, believe it or not, it actually jumps. I've seen it jump over 4 feet on the street. So I don't know how we deal with the side setback in terms of the eaves because it impacts the entire drawing. I don't know, like it's a partial. If you can go back to S12, and I would leave it at this. I don't know how we can refuse part of the eaves and not the other part. Mr. Chair, I have no idea how to deal with the situation because there's some confusion here. As how do we just identify part of that eaves projection and not all of it?
Okay, Mr. Bellissimo and or Mr. Marchese, could you perhaps assist? Does this discrepancy affect variance 3 or not? Because if it doesn't affect the variance, do we have an issue? Or it does affect potentially the variance when we got an issue, right? Is the variance
to the roof eave step back? That's what Mr. Bellissimo is referring to.
Okay, or the soffit.
So I'm happy to have the 0.005 for the portion of the dwelling, and not extend all the way through if that's satisfactory to committee. I don't know how you guys would word that, but I would leave that in your hands to see if that's possible.
Can we get input from staff on how we could word it's variance number 2? and there's a certain jog required there, and I have no idea how to address this at a meeting like this without a revised drawing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, a revised drawing would be the most appropriate, but as Mr. Marchese pointed out, you can also amend variance number 2 to permit it only for the, it looks like 9.84 meters of depth. We'd need an actual dimension for the line of the existing house so that we know where that jog happens. And if we had that number, then you can amend variance 2 to permit that encroachment only for the front, whatever depth it is, portion of the house only.
So could we tie
Otherwise,
that to a plan? Could you get that by applying with a plan, or is the plan incorrect? So that's a problem. Or the plan has.
Well, Mr. Bellissimo has identified discrepancies in that plan that we've all been looking at. So I would not recommend that you tie it to that plan because there seems to be some inconsistencies.
Okay, correct.
Can I interject something, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I believe we're all in agreement with the site plan and tying any potential approval to the site plan with regards to not giving a blanket approval on the setback. I think where our problem is there's an inconsistency between the drawings versus the elevation with the roof. Is it possible then to tie the approval of the eaves to the site plan as well? I'm not sure. I don't think we've ever seen that. I'm not sure if that's a possibility.
Mr. Chair, are you in committee right now, or am I able to just provide some comments?
Yeah, you're. I guess they're looking for your assistance as well as Mr. Carvalino's.
Okay, so if we can pull up S11 of the proposed drawings. So looking at where the jot out is, you have dimensions 2818 on the bottom, 9'3", 1524, 3511, and then at the top you have 1580, which accumulates of just under 9.5 meters. And I think that identifies where the jot out is. So if that number is satisfactory to permit the eaves at 0.05 for the first 9.5 meters of the dwelling, and then has to be compliant after that, I think that would satisfy committee's concerns in regards to not having that roof line extend all the way to the property line for the entire width or length of the dwelling.
And Mr. Chair, that was the recommendation of staff that we amend variance number 2 to that number, which Mr. Marchese has provided, so that it would only be for that existing portion, and then the jog would have to comply.
So how do we, assuming the committee members are prepared to support this application, how do we, looking to the staff as to how this would be worded, I would assume.
Mr. Chair, if staff could, if Ms. Price can bring up the notice. And there's also the recommendation of the site plan condition if committee is still concerned with the other jogs. So the site plan appears to be correct. Variance 2 would be the proposed eaves will be located 0.05 meters from the east side lot line for the front, and we'll confirm the number with the applicant, whatever number that is, meters of the proposed dwelling or of the dwelling. So that beyond that point, the eaves would have to comply.
Okay, is someone prepared to weigh in with a motion, given that clarification by Mr. Carvalino as to the additional wording to the variance number 2? And I guess we need a number from Mr. Marchese.
Yes, that was what I was going to be referring to. I did not write down the number that Mr. Marchese noted, and it would be, again, for the front, whatever that number is, portion of the dwelling only.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the number to be exact is 9.433 meters. If committee would be a little bit safe, that's the number that I would recommend be put in the decision, but happy for comments on that as well.
Quick question with that regard, Mr. Chair. Does that represent the distance of the existing house, or does that include that little additional piece that you're asking to be the same as the existing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if you go to S11, it will be right up until the jot out. So a portion of the new proposed addition, but not much of it. 1.58 meters approximately. So it'd be from the front main wall of that plan to where the jot out is.
Yeah.
Right there. That length there is 9.433. I think 9.5 gives it an even number that I think works and satisfies the concerns of the committee by implementing that number on the decision notice.
Danny, you're our architect. How do you feel about that?
I have great difficulties because there's no real number that I can look at. Maybe I can suggest something, get staff to comment on whether my suggestion will work. S11, can you, that's what's on the drawing on the site right now. I can't see. Yes, that's S11. Can you zoom in on the back portion? There is a broken line there, which I'm assuming, maybe I can ask the applicant, is that broken line where it says C1, although it's not identified, is that the eaves? Is that what you're interpreting as the eaves line?
Right above the C1?
Yes, it jogs around. There's a broken line that goes all around the whole house.
Dashed line.
Yes.
I would say that's the identification of the eaves. There's no dimension on it, but
Correct.
That's what you were saying when you were trying to make your presentation.
That's my interpretation. Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Bellissimo, that is my interpretation that is the eaves line being shown there on the plan. Yes. So
my question to staff is it possible I know I hate changing zoning review, but is it possible to limit the size of the eaves to say it's a 1 foot maximum eaves around the addition? Is that possible? Can we make that kind of a limit restriction?
Staff wouldn't recommend that.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I'm having difficulties because the plan's not complete and S11 does not show me what that line means, and then we can interpret it as an eaves, but it's just a line. So without identification, I really can't help the committee today. I'm sorry. I just agree with the neighbor that it's a problem with putting an eaves right up to a person's property line in addition when it could be avoided.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I still am of the opinion that the 9.5 meter number would deal from the front main wall right up to the jot out, if you calculate all the dimensions that are provided on there. And that would give me comfort that after 9.5 meters, which is the jot out, it has to be compliant with the 0.3 performance standard requirement in the bylaw. That's my opinion interpretation. If you put that number in there, which would lead right out, it has to be compliant at 0.3 meters or greater.
Yeah, that works. It makes sense to me, for what it's worth.
Mr. Kamara, could you attempt to word that in a motion? And I'm sure staff and Mr. Marchese will assist you as needed.
Okay, thanks very much. I'd like to move approval then, subject to the approval being tied to the site plan. I'm not sure, I don't have the date written down, I'm sorry. So if staff could find the date of that site plan with regards to the side yard setback. And furthermore, that it be tied to a distance that the variance with respect to the eaves be restricted to 9.3 meters from the front of the existing house? I don't know if that works. Looking for staff's comment on whether that would capture what we're trying to achieve.
Through you, Mr. Chair, was it 9.3 or 9.5? I had written down 9.5.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the number is 9.5.
Okay, my mistake. We'll do 9.5.
And measured from the front wall of the dwelling?
Measured from the front wall of the dwelling, yes.
Okay. Staff has that. Thank you.
Okay. And then there's urban forestry
But
condition
it's
1. Mr. Comeric, I see there's urban forestry condition 1 on this one.
I didn't note that, but if there is, absolutely then, yes.
Okay. Mr. Bellissimo?
Yes, I will second the motion on the condition of forestry. And given that staff has come up with the wording, I will second this motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everybody, all in favor? Okay, unanimous approval. And thank everyone. Thank you, Mr. Marchese and Mr. Carvalino, for helping us work through that. And
Yeah, I appreciate the time and the effort on this committee. Have yourself a great day. Thank you.
Okay, our next application is a very simple one. 28 Arkley Crescent is to construct a second-story addition over the existing dwelling and a new front porch. We have 4 variants and absolutely nothing on file, just the survey and plans filed with the application. Nothing before us, and the speaker is Stefan Chichovsky. Mr. Chichovsky?
Yes, hello, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Hi.
Okay, very straightforward application for minor variances. Is there anything you'd like to advise the panel members before I open it up to questions? I don't believe we need a presentation. No comments from
very, very straightforward. Basically, the first 3 items relate only to the fact that it's an existing bungalow and we're adding a second story, and we would like to build straight up exactly where the footprint is currently. While if we were to comply with the zoning, the second story would have to be set back and basically look like a dog's breakfast. So we believe that it's reasonable. The variance is minor in nature, and it'll not only make the project look good for our clients, but it'll be in keeping with any 2-story structure that's in the neighborhood where the second story is in line with the ground floor.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Chichovsky or someone ready to bring a motion? There's no conditions.
Danny Bellissimo would like to move for approval. I find that the design is very compact in nature and the variances are very minor.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. We have a seconder for that motion. Ms. Roddick, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Chichovsky.
Thank you kindly. Have a good day.
Okay, our next application, which is item number 15, is 289 to 291 the Kingsway and 135 and 7 Stevens Court. It's an application to permit a 6-story residential building, Building C. There is only one variance that the proposed maximum height of Building C, I guess under the site-specific zoning bylaw as shown on Schedule B, was 21 meters, in which case, in this case, Building C will have a maximum height of 21.8 meters. Like I said, we had the site-specific zoning bylaw, cover letter, arborist report, and a letter, as well as an applicant's presentation. And the speaker, we have Divine Park Law Firm appearing on this application. We also have in the additional materials that were received just this morning, we have a copy of City Council minutes from May 5th, 2021. On this application, we have Adrian Frank, the agent, as well as looks like another agent, Dev Mehta. I don't know who's going to be speaking. And we have Oli Schweg of 1190 Royal York Road. We'll have to find out what their position, if they're a neighbor, if they're in support, opposed, or it's some other person. So let's hear from Mr. Frank.
Good morning, sir. Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much, sir. With me today is, as you mentioned, Dave Mehta. He is the architect from Quadrangle, available to answer any questions the committee has. I would note that the additional material, which does not appear to be available on the screen. Oh, here it is. This
Sorry,
is
just to
a
clarify,
count-
you're a solicitor at Park, right?
That's correct. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
So the material in front of you on the screen is the council motion authorizing a variance application within the 2-year window after a site-specific rezoning. So we just wanted to be clear that this would otherwise face that difficulty, but with this council motion, the city has authorized this variance application. So to give you a quick summary, there has been in the finalization of the site plan, the development of building permit drawings, an adjustment to the transfer beams, which has resulted in a need for additional height on the stories that are available. I can walk you through the presentation if you would like to see this briefly, but the basic variance is for one building in the development, an 80-centimeter increase for the purpose of allowing construction to complete.
Okay, I don't think we need a presentation for that. Committee members, do you agree? We're talking about a 0.8 of a variance in height. So I see, who is Ollie Schweg? Is that someone with concerns or an opposition? Or is that someone on your team, Mr. Frank?
That is not an individual on our team.
Okay.
I cannot comment further.
Okay, so let's hear, because it's not clear what their position is here. Well, I see they live in rural York. Let's hear from, does anyone have any questions, first of all, for Mr. Frank before you move on to hear from the neighbor? Okay, so let's hear from Ollie Schweg.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Ollie Schweg. I am the owner of 2 of the 4 properties that sit directly in front of the proposed Building C variance property. My properties are 1190 and 1192 Royal York Road. I currently reside at 1190 Royal York Road. I'm a retiree and live with my child in this building. We've lived here for 10 years. My niece resides at 1192 Royal York Road, and she's lived there for some 5 years. We are opposed to the proposed higher variance to Building C. We are very concerned about our right to light. The current laws of the province of Ontario permit property owners and residents to a right to light. We are concerned that this proposed project variance will seriously impose on our right to light. We had no problems with access to light when the former buildings were in place. However, this new project includes higher stories than what previously existed. This will cause a major impact on our right to light. A further higher height variance will seriously impact our rights to light even further. We do not want our backyards to be plunged into deep darkness. The residents of Etobicoke enjoy their backyards. This enhances their quality of life. Our backyards are extensions of our homes. We live in our backyards. How can we expect our families to go into their backyards into the dark by being devoid of sunlight? No one wants to play in the dark. No one wants to barbecue in the dark. And no one wants to dine in the dark. It will be bad enough to have strangers looking down at us from these proposed mid-rise buildings on Stephen Court, but to suffer a lack of sunlight is not acceptable. I repeat, this is not acceptable. Therefore, we are opposed to a higher size of Building C. Also, I wish to add, to date, we've suffered greatly from this ongoing project on the Stephen Court lands. At times, the construction noise is unbearable.
Ma'am, sorry, I'm not going to allow that. We're talking about an increase of 0.8 in the height. We don't want to hear about construction. There's going to be construction, or there was construction, whether it's as approved under the site-specific zoning bylaws. So what you have to show the committee is how that additional 0.8 of a meter is not appropriate, whereas
how far is the setback?
So it's the only question is the 0.8 of a meter that you're here to object to, not the overall
Sir,
construction.
how far is the setback from my fence, please?
Sorry?
How far is the setback from my fence? Because what you've sent me, I can't read it. It's too,
Okay, well, we'll have the applicant can respond. You can ask any questions and we'll have the applicant respond. So what was
Thank
your
you.
question?
How far is the setback from my fence to that building C?
Okay.
What is the current setback?
Okay, he'll respond. Just make all your submissions and he'll respond after he's finished speaking. But what I'm just trying to point out is, you know, I know you have these buildings and
I understand. I
it's
got your
close to you,
point.
but we're dealing with the 0.8 here. That's all we're dealing with. Everything else has
Okay.
been approved.
Okay, just one moment, please, because I wrote that down. I need to know what the current setback is from my property, from my fence to building C, and how many stories are they currently putting on that building?
Okay, so you know,
Thank
okay,
you.
so yeah, so you're concerned with your right to light, and you're saying this is
Yes.
acceptable, but like I'm saying, you it's already an approved project, and you're just here to argue about the additional 0.8, how that is a further impact on you. I don't know. We don't have shadow studies, but I would assume you're already, as you say, in the dark, and that extra 0.8 of a meter may not have any effect on you. So I'd like to hear that from the applicant as well on that, if that makes the position worse for you, or maybe for someone else even further afield. But it's
Can he first
0.8
answer
of a
the
meter.
two questions about the setback and the height of the building?
Yeah. Okay,
The number of stories, please.
Okay, so can we, maybe we can get, we'll let Mr. Frank answer that before you finish your submissions. How about we do that? Mr. Frank?
Thank you, sir. Yes, I would first note that the neighborhood association has in fact offered no objection. So this has been reviewed through them and through their involvement, their active involvement.
Sorry, you're
throughout
going to
the
get a
rezoning
chance to
process.
rebut. You're going to get a chance to rebut.
Oh,
For now,
pardon me.
Can we just, I'm just asking you to interject in the middle of
Certainly.
The neighbor's presentation to just clarify those two questions for her, because it may have some
Yes,
assistance.
Certainly, I can't comment on the siting on her property with respect to those where her home is relative to the property line, but I can confirm that building C is between 9.3 and 14.5 meters away from the shared property line. So it's somewhere in between those numbers would be the setback to her specific property. The height of building C is 6 stories, and as indicated in the variance, the approved height is 21 meters with an additional height allowed for parapet and mechanical penthouse. I would leave further detail to Mr. Mehta, the architect, who is available as well.
Okay, so let's go back to Ms. Schwag. You have the answer. We have the answer that to your questions. So if you'd like to just continue on and sum up your concerns and
Sir?
see if anybody
Sir,
has any questions for you.
Can you convert, can that gentleman convert the meters to feet, please? Because I grew up in feet, not meters.
Anyway, let's have him, he's going to respond. Can you just finish what you've had to say? It's not, this is not a charrette, it's like a presentation. So I allowed him to interject. I asked him to give an answer in the middle of your presentation to assist you, but we're not going to continue this way. Please finish your presentation and we'll have Mr. Frank respond. Okay, I'm sorry.
Just a moment, I'm just confused as to where I left off. Well, I wanted to discuss the problem with the heavy trucks coming in. They come in sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning, and then they start 6:30 in the morning with loud
Excuse me,
construction.
ma'am, we're the Committee of Adjustment. We deal with planning issues, any issues of construction. Well, there's certainly valid concerns. If you have issues during construction, or if you've had an abuse, just call the city, call 311, or call the building department and complain. But we don't deal with issues of noise from construction and
I
that
can
type
call
of
3
issues.
o'clock in the morning and someone will answer?
Anyway, ma'am, I'm just telling you, we don't deal with those concerns.
I see. Okay, fine.
Okay.
Now, I asked a question. The gentleman responded in meters. Like, I wanted to know about the setback, and he responded in meters. Can he convert it into feet, please? Because that's what I understand.
Ma'am, as I said, please finish your presentation and Mr. Frank will respond. We're not going back and forth anymore.
I'm not going to continue with the presentation because you don't want to hear what I have to say.
I want to hear what you have to say, but I'm just telling you, we're not going back to Mr. Frank for answers in between. Please finish your presentation. I've let you gone on more than 5 minutes. I'd like you to finish and then he will respond.
Well, You know, my building is cracking right now. The ceilings are cracking, walls are cracking, and my building was built in 2004 by a very renowned local architect for himself and his family. Okay? And all these cracks are starting to happen. And
Excuse
that's
me,
just,
ma'am,
and,
ma'am, I need to hear from you
and
on
now
the
you're
difference in
building
8.8 of a
huh?
meter on height. That's all I can hear from you on. Please advise the committee
Well,
members of your impact of the additional 0.8 meters in height. That's all that's
okay.
before us, ma'am.
I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, but I have stated what my concerns are regarding the height. I didn't want the building to be any higher, and I didn't know about these parapet things on top of the building as well, which will impact my right to light in addition to the 8 meters or 8, whatever you're proposing for the height variance.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all you'd like to say? I've let you go over time. You're over 8 minutes, so let's.
You don't want to hear what I have to say, so that's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Yeah, as I told you, ma'am, I don't want you to feel that you've been your issues are not being addressed. We don't deal with construction noise. We don't deal with the overall project. We're dealing with a 0.8 increase.
I understand. You know, we work hard all our lives to find a property we can retire in, and then we find big problems because others want to make a fortune.
Okay.
And the city wants more taxes. And nobody cares about us, the simple taxpayer.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Frank, would you like to respond to the concerns of the neighbors briefly, and then we'll see if. First of all, before we do that, does any of the committee members have any questions for the neighbor at 1190 Royal York before we move on at this point? Okay, so let's move back to Mr. Frank.
Thank you, sir. I have 2 notes. The first is that the applicant has, in fact, consulted the local residents association, the Humber Valley Village Residents Association. While I'm sensitive to this particular neighbor's concerns, the project as a whole has been designed and developed in close consultation with those neighbors, and in fact was a result of an extensive consultation process. The Humber Valley Village Residents Association does not object to this height increase. With respect, I am not able to acknowledge that this increase in height would create a lack of sunlight or a property nearby being in the dark. That's just not physically how this would operate. But if we could turn to the applicant's presentation and specifically slides 6 and 7. These would be the elevations, building C west elevation, and then the following slide as well. If we could just zoom in. My comment about the parapet is just to clarify that the height being measured is below the parapet. This is the height of the slab roof that is increasing. And then on the following slide, the section shows both where the existing approved roof is and where the proposed roof would be. And if further clarification of these impacts is required, there is no variance for a change in the parapet. And I would just invite Mr. Mehta to comment on whether or not there would be any noticeable impact with respect to shadowing. Beyond that, and any further questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Frank?
Just one question, if I may. Unfortunately, we're only seeing a small snippet of this at our committee, but just wanted to know whether, as part of the rezoning process or whatever it was, approval process you went through, whether shadowing studies were done and provided to the residents on Royal York.
Sir, through you, Mr. Chair, yes, shadowing studies were prepared, several rounds of shadowing studies, in fact, as part of an extensive mediation process with the tribunal, provided through the Residents Association and to a number of individual residents. I can't comment on whether the speaker here today was a part of that process, but those shadow studies were vetted by both city staff and the tribunal as part of that process, and the shadow impacts were ultimately deemed to be either acceptable or acceptably mitigated in order to make the project as a whole acceptable for the tribunal's approval.
Again, if I may do a supplemental, Mr. Chair, again, we can't really ascertain what this impact is without looking at those shadowing studies. And I'm not sure if your architect has access to that at our presentation right now, because I guess the question would be, is there any change in those shadowing studies by adding the roughly 2.5 feet to the overall height of the building? Because I would suspect that those houses are already going to be in shadow based on what's already approved. But again, that's what perhaps your architect can address. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Frank. I would agree. I would welcome feedback from the architect, both due to his familiarity with the studies, but also his understanding of this change in the slab and the resulting impact.
So when you mentioned Mr. Mehta before, I was going to say that, you know, you are the agent. We only allow one speaker from each party. But how Mr. Carvalino, the question now, the fact that Mr. Komorek has raised this as an issue, I personally don't believe in that additional 0.8. She's already, the shadows are, but the shadow it's right behind, it may extend further. But given the question, can we now hear from Mr. Mehta, given that Mr. Komorek has asked the question?
Mr. Chair, ordinarily we wouldn't accept new evidence, but this is in reply to a question of committee member. So we wouldn't object to having his question answered. I'd also like to say that for the 0.8 of a meter, the Committee of Adjustment application does not require the shadow studies. It's not part of a complete application.
Thank you, Mr. Carvalino. We're talking about 0.8 of a meter. So, Mr. Komorek, would you like Mr. Mehta, the architect, to comment answer your question, to give you some comfort on whether this would possibly increase the impact to any extent?
You know, quite frankly, I don't think I don't need a fulsome presentation. I just wanted a quick confirmation with regards to the shadow impact. I mean, I just want to confirm what I suspect. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Mehta.
Good afternoon, committee. This is Mr. Mehta speaking. I have the shadow studies open on my end. I don't believe I can share them with you right now, but in reviewing them, I do not believe that the additional 0.8 meters would have a noticeable or even any notable impact on shadows of the adjacent properties than would already be provided at the current approved height.
Thank you.
That's all I wanted. Thank you.
Okay, so let's take it into committee then, if there's any last minute questions, or is someone ready to weigh in with a motion?
Sorry, question from Neil Palmer. So the variance requested, is it properly depicted in site plan A101? Where the roof height is listed at 21.8, and then there's a mechanical roof listed at 26.7, I believe it says. And if we were to give approval, if we tie it into this site plan, would that be appropriate?
Mr. Frank, I think Mr. Palmer's question is for you. He's asking for whether this, did we lose Mr. Frank?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just waiting to be taken off mute. That is correct. It is as depicted on site plan A. As you may be familiar with, in many zoning bylaws throughout the city, mechanical penthouse, parapets, and other matters are provided for in the zoning bylaw as exceptions to those height limits up to a specific additional height. So the increase in height is for the slab itself, and those other matters would simply would go on as they normally do. So we would be comfortable with tying the approval to that site plan.
Thank you. Okay, is someone ready to make a motion? And perhaps you can include, in the event if it's a positive motion, to include that condition.
Danny Bedissimo would like for approval. I find looking at all the cross sections that the slab is necessary to build the top floor. Without that, they can't even build the 6th floor. So we're going back on a promise that we made with the developer and with the community. So I would move approval. I find that the variances are minor in nature, and we can tie it to the site plan because the site plan does talk about the extra height, although all the elevations do the same. But I'm glad to take Mr. Palmer's suggestion that we just tie it to the site plan as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. We have a seconder for that motion. Mr. Palmer, all in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Bronster. Sorry, Mr. Frank. And thank you to the neighbor as well. And I trust you understand what we had before us was just the 0.8 of a meter height. Okay, our last application of the morning session is item number 16, 31 Hilldowntree Road. I thought that's why I called it on the defer. I thought I saw a request for deferral. We have quite a number of opposition, 8 letters of opposition. It's for a 1-story rear addition, a 2nd-story addition above the existing dwelling, new front porch, rear basement walkout, and rear yard deck. There are 8 variances. We had 8 letters of opposition. There's Urban Forestry is requesting a denial, or I believe a deferral. Planning was asking for a deferral, but I think we established that this matter is proceeding. I guess the applicant has chosen that they wish to proceed. In the supplemental series, we had a slew of, we have an agent email as well as we have further letters of objection from area residents, including one letter with no
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt. There is a new memo or email from community planning staff in the 2nd additional materials that was sent out this morning.
Okay, can you please oh, I see. That was I saw that written as an urban forestry deferral request. Was there something else in the additional materials from this morning?
There's an email from, staff has it up on the screen now. There was an email from.
Okay, so based on the revised notice sheet, the planning has withdrawn their concern. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, that's why we're proceeding. Okay, so we have a number of speakers on this application. We have the applicant or the agent, Dragan Asimovic, and then we have neighbors from 29 and 33 Hilldowntree, as well as 2 other speakers from adjacent streets, Chestnut Hills Parkway, 74 and 78. So we have 4 speakers registered in addition to the applicant. So let's hear from the applicant, Mr. Akimovic. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
We still
Thank
do have
you.
the urban
Can you
forestry request for refusal, right? So, and we have a lot of opposition. So you have 5 minutes.
I fully. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I fully understand what is in front of me here. My name is Dan Achimovic. Dragan Achimovic is fine as well. I'm the owner of DA Design, and we are the designers for this project. I understand that the urban forestry is a request for deferral, and if I could please ask the presenter to turn over to the proposed site plan, I would appreciate that, if possible. Yeah, thank you. It's coming right up after the survey here. Okay, perfect. Yeah, next one actually, the proposed site plan. Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. So at the beginning of this process, we were asked by the planning department to provide photos of the trees on the property. And believe it or not, there's literally a couple trees here. There's one at the very front, just in front of the front doors, and it's just basically just barely on the private property. It is approximately 5 meters from the existing home frontage. There is one tree at the very back on the top right corner, and obviously that's not really part of the concern here. We do plan, under building permit requirements to provide protection and through an arborist report, we would provide the proper hoarding for that. So I've been talking to Urban Forestry about that item, and hopefully we can approve this with that condition. The site is 60 feet wide by 140 feet deep, And as you can tell on this diagram, there is a light gray shading, basically representing the existing home. The dark gray is the rear addition to the back of the property. Because the property is 60 feet wide and 140 deep, you can also tell that there's approximately 60 feet of softscape left over. So it's a rather large site, and there's quite a bit of green space left over on this property even after we do this addition. The owner came to us with this proposal, asking us to design a home like this to include some of the modern amenities, such as a 2-story space, basement walkout, etc. And this is basically where we ended up at. He also wanted to use or reuse the existing building as much as possible. You don't have to scan through the drawings, but if you look through our plans, you're going to see that most of the existing basement is salvaged and most of the ground floor is being salvaged except for part of the rear wall. We think this is the right way to go ahead with this type of project. Most of it has to do with environmental benefits. Basically, we're not tearing down the entire house and sending it to a landfill. As you can tell by that last email, the planning department did have a concern with one item. So they called us a few weeks ago. Timur was gracious enough to actually make a phone call, which I really appreciate, and basically told us that they were in support of this entire proposal except for the depth of the property. Actually, I believe it's the length, I believe. So we were at 19 meters. Since then, we reduced the length to 18.35, and that is the building length, actually. So from 19 to 18.35, we reduced it by 0.65 of a meter, about 2'2" in overall length. This resulted in reductions in 4 other variances. So from the 8 that we had, we reduced the GFA. We also reduced the FSI. There was a slight adjustment to the front yard setback, and we also reduced permitted building length. As I mentioned, permitted building height stayed the same. Of course, soffits stayed the same. We really didn't change that. And we also changed the depth of the rear platform. That used to be 4.84. It's now reduced to 4.18 because the entire building basically pulled in from the rear. Roof eaves were also remained. Now, if we go back to that site plan, if you don't mind, I'll just speak to about a couple of the other variances that are listed in here. So again, the side yard setbacks are basically caused, again, if you zoom in on the house itself, those are caused by the existing conditions. So it's the light gray area that represents the existing home that is non-compliant currently. Because we're salvaging it and building walls on top of that, we have a couple of variances on the 2 sides. The proposed addition at the back, you'll see that it actually follows the city setbacks that are that we fall under. Okay, so we're trying to limit the impact on the neighborhood as much as possible. With the new portion, obviously, there's not much we can do with the existing. The length has been reduced, as I mentioned. Rear balcony height. Part of the problem with that rear balcony height is, again, if you look at if you go to the side elevations, you'll notice that the grading drops from the street towards the rear. Okay, and because of that, balcony height, the drop in the grading itself attributes about 0.8 meters to the overall height of it. Okay, rear balcony length has been reduced. The eaves we did not reduce, but basically the reason the sidewall heights and the heights of the eaves did not reduce, mostly because of the design issues at hand. The owner did not want partial walls and sloped ceilings inside this modern home. We did keep within the maximum allowable building height. So from that perspective, we're actually not over on the building height. Regarding some of the neighborhood comments, I have gone through the letters that were submitted. There were a few references regarding a 3-story home. This is not a 3-story home. If you go over to the building sections right after the elevations here, please, you'll notice, you will clearly see that this is a 2-story home with a walkout basement condition. The only reason they may consider this as a 3-story is because we have a split level on top of the garage for a partial rec room, and that's on the image right above this one. Yeah, so right there. So you can see that this is clearly a 2-story home, not a 3-story home. The side elevations from a privacy perspective have very few windows. We have very tall, slender windows on the stairs, coupled on the master bedroom. And again, the idea is to get some light into the center of the house, but they are very minimal in size, scale, and number of them. And again, we're just trying to provide that privacy. We are open to, the owner is open to further reductions in windows on the sides, privacy screens if required by the neighbor at 33, as she had mentioned in her letter of objection. And yeah, we're open to working with the neighbors on that. But from that perspective, we're hoping that you will find these variances minor in nature and will approve this application.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Acknowledgement before we move on to hear from the neighbors? No? Okay, so the first neighbor we'll hear from is Mary Lee Keefe of 29 HILLDOWNTREE, who's right next door. On one side, we have then neighbor on the other side, and then we have two neighbors in the back. So let's hear first.
Yes, it's Mary Lee. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, okay, there's a few things I want to just quickly as a background. I've been a real estate agent in the area for 20 years, and I've lived in that house with my husband and family since 2012. Our house was also the same size as the original house and was a rebuild, but it's a much smaller size than what's proposed here, obviously. But the main reason that people have moved into Humber Valley are these large, spacious, very, very private backyards that everybody has. And this is really out of context of the whole neighborhood. First of all, the trees that I just have to mention about the trees, and this has been in some of the letters, but I have before and after pictures that I couldn't see any neighbors from the trees that were originally in the 31 HILLDOWNTREE Road backyard. They were all cut down in the spring, and every single tree, and now it's wide open. I can see every neighbor on both sides all over the place. And so we've all been impacted by that. So when to say that there's one tree in the backyard it's not really the way it was. I don't know what happened there, but every single tree is gone. So there's that. And now, from our side, we're on the east side. We've chosen to really develop our backyard. It's like our cottage in the city. We've got a pool and cabana, and we eat out there. There's dining and sitting area. We entertain and swim and everything. This house now, and I have a picture if you want to bring it up on my letter that might put it in perspective. I just tried to take a picture of the side of where the house is going. I don't know. I'm not on my computer, so I can't see it. Can you bring that up or? Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking
Sorry.
through the opposition.
I lost you. Sorry?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm looking through all the opposition letters to find her name, but there's quite a few.
Okay, it's Mary Lee Keefe.
Mary
Yeah.
Lee
So
Keefe.
I'll just continue. When you see, and Erin Thiesby, who is also speaking, she has also a picture from her side, because we're both most affected by the length of this building and the height. It is proposed as a one-story addition, but if you compare the two elevations, the first floor of the new house, side by side, the elevations, it starts at the top of the existing house. So they've raised the backyard, and they're talking about the elevation of the decline in the slope. But it is like going to be it's one story, but it's a two-story ceiling because it goes all the way up as a cathedral ceiling, basically. So essentially, when you look at the picture of our house, it goes all the way basically to the end of the trees. I don't know if the picture's up yet. And it'll be above those trees because those trees aren't even as high as our house. So it'll be like one brick, looking like a three-story brick wall for like all of our space. It'll take away all our afternoon sun and we basically live out there. We entertain out there, everything, and we will lose everything from this. And it will seriously affect the value of our home because it's just going to be a big brick wall like an apartment building next door. So those are our biggest concerns. You know, I think everybody that has written in the letters from all of the neighbors address each variance, and I won't go into that, but I think that's giving a perspective of how it affects us the most. Is just like it's just going to be a brick wall that was never there and take away all of our light from early afternoon on throughout the day. That's it. We usually have a gorgeous, you know, the whole backyard is flooded with sunlight. So that is those are our biggest concerns. And but I do think most of the neighbors, everybody's pretty upset about it. And I think all of the neighbors will have really done a good job of trying to outline all of the details. So that's it for me, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Keefe. Can we hear now from the next neighbor on the other side, either Aaron Feasby or Sam Dreska at 33.
Dreska, yes. Hi, Aaron Feasby speaking. Thank you for your time. I won't repeat everything that Mary Lee has said, but from our perspective, if you could bring up my letter, our letter, it shows some photos as well. We have a turret that is the rearmost extension of our home. It was an addition put on by previous owners, so it is also, our house has been increased in size from its original dwelling as well. Also substantially smaller than what is proposed. So there's our turret. Our main concern is that the proposed addition, number one, in the application, it calls it a one-story rear addition, whereas you can actually see, I won't make you jump around just yet, but at some point we should pull up A313, which is the rear addition, elevation. In any case, it shows a two-story dining room that is part of this supposed one-story addition. And as well, it also asks for a walkout and a rear yard deck. The deck is essentially part of the addition as it is built onto a foundation. And unfortunately, the dimension is missing from the side elevations, but from my estimation, it appears that this rear patio starts at about approximately 8 to 10 feet off of the proposed grade, and the proposed grade is not the existing grade. The drawings do show quite a drop from the front yard to the rear. You can see in those side yard photos I've included there up on the screen, we are level with them. Our walkway is level with them. And it is a very gradual slope, not at all what is proposed. So of course we have concerns about how this will affect the grading up against our walkway. I think there will be about a foot, if not more, drop as you kind of reach where you are at the bottom of those photos, which is our gate. In any event, the deck that faces our turret will sit about 8 to 10 feet as far as we can tell off the proposed grade. And have a bird's eye view right into our breakfast room. But our main concern is that two-story addition of the dining room. It will essentially block all of our morning light. We did document, if you scroll down further to our photos of light, that is our breakfast room, the main floor of the turret. And if you scroll to the next page, it is our ensuite bath. Those photos were taken about 8 a.m. This part of what probably our favorite thing about our home is the light. That's the morning light that blankets those two areas. And that light, we documented the sun as it traveled, and we would be in shade until at least 10 a.m. in the summer months. Of course, we were documenting this in the summer months. One would assume we would be in shade longer in the winter months. And this would greatly, take away our enjoyment of our home and one of our favorite features of this space. I did speak with the owner, George. They are a very nice couple. Certainly, we do want to remain neighborly. We do want them to build, if they intend to live here, as they say they do, their dream home. We do want them to improve the property, but certainly not at the expense of our enjoyment of our property. I do feel that the additions are extensive in length and height. And I did notice after I spoke to George, unfortunately, I didn't mention this to him, I noticed the balcony off their master bedroom on the second floor where it sits, if you look at their survey one more time, you will see that if you're standing on their balcony, they will essentially be looking right into our bathtub and our shower, which will cause us to have to leave our blinds closed all the time, which is sad because we do have beautiful views of what used to be lots of trees, but certainly, you know, neighbors on Chestnut Hills have lovely tree lots, and we will lose that with our blinds closed. Those are essentially our main concerns. I think, as the presenter from the owner's side indicated, I do think the Georgies are amenable to changing their plans. I got that sense from George when I spoke with him. I think if I had brought up the balcony with him, he probably would have, I'm just assuming here, but he did indicate that he did not want to affect our privacy, and even indicated that they were willing to lose the windows from the master bedroom west elevation that might look also into our ensuite. So I do think they are amenable to some changes, which is hopeful. But I think at this stage, just my experience with Committee of Adjustment, I do think we have to rely on the committee to make the recommendations for the necessary changes in hopes that they can comply better and satisfy the concerns of quite a few neighbors, 8 of which in opposition live on HILLDOWNTREE. Thank you for your time.
Wow, exactly 5 minutes to the second. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Feasby before we move on to the next neighbor with objections? Looks like the neighbors in the rear at 74 and 78. So now we'll have heard from both sides. No questions? So let's move on to Ross Dallin at 74 Chestnut Hills Parkway.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Yes, I agree with the owners on 29 and 33. I do not see these as minor variances to the building codes. Once again, just to iterate, not spend an extensive time. From the drawings, yes, it looks like a 3-story addition. It may not be requested as such, but there once again, the extensive walls and the extensive height over eaves and the length of the property width variances and overall square footage of the property as well. It does not seem to be keeping in character with the neighborhood. Once again, the prior comments of all the trees, yes, all the trees were taken down previously. It was a very extensively treed property. Now, very small tree in the corner of the lot, which naturally they do not have a variance to because most of them have been taken down. So once again, the overall variances of the 2 and 8 are very minor in my view, but all the other ones I find very extensive and I oppose to it. So to keep up the time elements here, I'll just sign off and I say I disagree and I oppose to the overall package at the present time, the way it's being presented. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dallin. Just point out Mr. Dallin is at 74 Chestnut Hills, which looks like it's about 1.5 properties behind to the west.
That's correct.
Yeah, and now we're going to hear from 78, who's directly behind. The lot sort of straddles 78 and 80, so we're going to hear from 78, who's directly behind of half of the lot anyway. Tariq Nazir.
Mr. Chairman, the new build is excessively larger and will be out of place in our neighborhood. It'll have a 28% increase in size. The side walls will be 1.99 meters higher than the allowed, and this is also after dropping the grade as well, which technically is much higher. The house will be looking down at my backyard and the back of my home, giving us no privacy. Again, this house, like, we're right behind them. The length of the house will be 2 meter. The length of the house will be a 2 meter extension, resulting in much closer to our backyard, and will affect our privacy as our pool and our sitting area is close to the backyard. Also, this will look out of place compared to the existing houses with the setback, the wider, and the height. Loss of privacy, our family room, our kitchen, our master bedroom, and our pool are facing the backyard. The new build will be built much higher and will give them a clear view into our backyard. The elevation of the rear master bedroom balcony will overlook our entire backyard, plus the variances if approved, the windows in the back will be much higher and greater views into our backyards and into our master bedroom, kitchen, and our family room, giving us no privacy. This will also give us the view in our backyard. This will also give us a view in our backyard of a much higher home that will affect our light coming in, and we'll be staring at a house that's much higher with so many windows and a balcony overlooking our house as well. They have 2 balconies in the back. The neighbor already cut down all the trees, which gave us some privacy. Some of them were 40 centimeters in diameter, leaving no privacy. And over the winter months, when the trees lose their leaves, there will be definitely no privacy in the back. Again, my concern, being the neighbor in the back with the pool and with our family and our kitchen in the back, that will be like a fishbowl. They'll be looking down into us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nazir. Just before we go back to the agent, I just want to point out we have 4 letters of objection from, and just kudos to the neighbors. I see here we have 8 letters. They're all individually written. It's not like a petition, I object, with no rationale or just signing on to letter 1. So we have 8 real letters here that people have taken the time from their busy schedules, and they don't usually get a lot of time to do these things also. So just a general comment, it's very, whether it's just to raise their concerns for people to get that involved, it's, this is where they live. So Mr. Asimov, we hear back, you've heard from 4 neighbors. We'd like to hear you in rebuttal to just respond to the concerns of the neighbors.
Yes, thank you. Thanks very much for that. I appreciate the feedback from everybody, and it's crystal clear, as you mentioned, in the letters, lengthy letters that they've sent in. I mean, once again, we're not over on the building height, so that will, even if we are to revise this, we're really not going to, have to reduce it, I guess, from a zoning perspective. The owner is, as I mentioned, open, and I think one of the presenters mentioned, he is open to, changes to the side windows to provide more privacy. That's not an issue at all. Privacy screens off of balconies, terraces can be installed as well, but without any issues there. From what I understand, again, I was not on site when this was, when it had the trees and the shrubs at the back. It's actually kind of news to me, but since we took over the project, basically the owner told me that he cleared the backyard because it was, as he described it, a jungle. He is certainly not opposed to building a tall wooden solid fence at the rear or sides, whatever's required, and he's also very much in in agreement with planting tall coniferous, fast-growing trees as required to provide even more privacy to any of the neighboring properties, especially the ones that have so clearly objected here. From a grading perspective, if you don't mind going back to my submission, there is a, if you go to the survey, the existing survey, just want to explain something regarding grading, because I think this is being misunderstood and maybe not, and it's not that easy to understand. So if you zoom in on that one right there, that survey, yep, please. And if you look on the west side, which is the neighbor at 33, zoom in on the small numbers at the top left corner, please. You will see the number right at the top left corner of the existing house, which represents the elevation at about 99.95. And as you scroll down that west side towards the turret at the back, you can see that the grade drops to 99.45, 99.35, and that's what we're representing on our elevations. So we're not changing grades by any means, and of course during the permitting process, stormwater management will have to be approved. We're not lowering, hiring, we're not digging any holes or anything like that. So from that perspective, there's really no change, and we're just kind of taking advantage of that drop in grade to design this walkout basement, which will allow more light into the basement. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. Committee members, any questions for the agent on his rebuttal, or for that matter, any other follow-up questions for any of the neighbors who spoke, or is someone ready to weigh in with the motion?
Danny Bedesmo has a question of the applicant. If staff can put on the rendering of the rear additions. I have a question. That's the front, I believe.
That's the front, yeah.
And the next, this one below, keep going down, I think. No, get away. Okay. I don't know, can you zoom in on the left image? Yeah, okay, so question of the applicant, that huge fenestration on the far right, that is a two-story addition, is that correct?
Correct, it's a dining room, yes.
Yeah, so that two-story addition is a high ceiling interior. And my understanding of zoning is that the gross floor area on the second floor, I'll call it second floor, although it's absent, is not included in your calculations. Is that correct?
I believe in the GFA, there is a 4% deduction for openings, but no,
Yes.
that area above is not part of the GFA.
So the GFA in reality is larger than what is shown in variance 1.
I mean, from a zoning perspective, no one's up there. I mean, it's a solid wall, so it's not like it's usable GFA. So
Most of the objections have been, I think, what I've heard, in relationship to the height of that addition and the fact that it's at to one corner of the house and not in the center. And by being at one corner, you are negatively impacting the neighbors, especially to that side. So I just wanted to clarify, because my understanding is that it's that extra floor in there, which is airspace, and it's really, the gross floor area in my mind is larger. In other words, in the future, someone could add a floor in there and benefit from that extra airspace above that. I mean, it does happen. So I just wanted to clarify that about the gross floor area. The second question, my last question is, I see a lot of letters of opposition made, a lot of presentations by opposition. Did you or your client go around talking to the neighbors in this proposal to try to get support?
I believe the owner spoke to at least the neighbor at 33, and I did ask him to, contact the neighboring owners and discuss this with them. So I know that he discussed it at least with 33. I'm not sure if he discussed it with the others.
So thank you. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I'll let other members ask some questions before I have a motion to move if other members are interested in questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. Thank you for pointing that out, because most of us, that's why it's good to have an architect on the committee. We wouldn't have realized. So I guess they have a full, beautiful dining room, double floor height. So you're saying at some point, and that doesn't reflect it in the GFA. And if someone could in the future, I assume they're not designing it that way. If it's open space, but it presents to the street or to the community as if it would be a floor there, but yet it doesn't count. So thank you. Any other questions, or is someone ready to bring a motion?
I'll try to make a motion. I'd like to move refusal of the proposal. I think that it's excessive and it's not respective of the neighbors. Although in the drawing it looks nice if it was in the field, but it's not in the field. It's surrounded by houses, and the true impact of that rear addition does not show up. In my mind, it is a major negative impact. So I'm moving refusal of all the variances.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bell. Yeah, we approve not variances, but the applications. Your motion is to refuse the application in its entirety. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Mr. Komarek?
Yeah, and if I could just add some comments to that. What is being asked for here is a 5,500 square foot house. That's not a small building. I know percentage wise, and we look at GFA, we also look at, what is the size and massing of this? And Danny made a good point that from a massing perspective, this would actually look more than that 5,500. So on that basis, I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, the application is unanimously refused. Thank you, Agent. Thank you to the 4 neighbors who spoke. And we're now adjourned until the afternoon session, which we will start at 2 p.m., 1 hour late. With our apologies, we did start about, almost a half an hour late, and we had some lengthy applications. But we have a very good news is we have a very short afternoon with not that many items on it. So we'll see everybody here at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Enjoy your lunch.